What's going on, gang, and welcome back to Scared of Normal. I'm Mike Murphy, and today I'm joined by my co-host James Stocco, and today's guest is an awesome one. He's an Olympian, he's a professional snowboarder, an adventurer, a cocktail-making wizard, and an all-around great dude. We're stoked to welcome Justin Reiter to the show. Thanks so much for making the trek down from Steamboat to come hang for a little bit, dude.
Thank you guys very much for having me.
And thank you for this tasty beverage that you've shaken up for us.
No worries. It's called the Paper Plane, courtesy of a good buddy of mine out of Kansas, and pretty tasty little concoction.
Dude, it's awesome. Yeah. Can you tell us what's in it in case anybody wants to?
Yeah, of course.
Pause for a second and make it before they enjoy this episode.
While they listen along, you can actually have a real meta experience, virtual reality. It is equal parts lemon juice, fresh squeezed lemon juice, Amarone Nino, which is like an Italian spirit. We use Mythology bourbon out of Steamboat Springs, and Aperol, and equal parts shaken for about 20 seconds over ice and then poured, served neat. Nice little kind of late summer, early winter giddy up.
It's so awesome, dude. Yeah, it is. It is perfect for this season, actually. Like, it's going down way too easily. Might have to pause and make another one at some point. Yeah, so let's get into this thing. I want to know where you grew up, man. Let's start there. That seems like a great spot.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be born in Lake Tahoe, California. Spent the first portion of my life there, about 6 years, and then moved to Summit County, Colorado. So grew up in Dillon, but no one ever really knows what Dillon is, so kind of say Breck, even though I never grew up with the Brecken thugs. Those were the rich kids. We were just the poor trailer trash out of Dillon. And but yeah, I grew up in Dillon and learned how to snowboard there and a lot of different things, and still kind of consider Colorado home despite being born in California.
Sure. What year or how old were you when you moved to Colorado?
I think I was about 6, 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before you moved here, you were on the skis, right?
I was on skis. Yeah. My mom took me out to Squaw Valley, taught me how to ski there.
Heck
and and we had a lot of fond memories of growing up in Truckee, being born in Truckee, growing up in North Shore, Lake Tahoe, and going down to the lake and having our dogs there. And it was a really, really cool spot. But majority of like my core memories come from being in Colorado.
Amazing, man. So you first set up on skis at 18 months, is that correct?
Yeah, Mom got me on skis early. Some little plastic, little red ones that she had me tromp around the living room. We had a super small house and more like a box with some windows, and just tromp around there, just me and her. And then she took me up to Squaw and taught me how to ski. And so, yeah.
That's amazing.
Was she a big skier as well?
She's about average height, but she liked to ski a lot.
God damn, are you dad? Hang on, I'm about to probably make noise. What I did get to thinking, I was like, man, you have a nice setup. But like, none of our guests have been like just sat back, brought the mic to them.
Yeah,
we're always
chilling.
like sat up on the table. So sorry, I'm just diverting this podcast to talk about how relaxed you looked. And I was like, I would like to join you.
Just one chill dude, man.
Just one chill dude. Got the chill cardigan on and stuff. So mum of average height.
Mom of average height.
Yeah.
But very active, very outdoorsy. And she got me into skiing, and that was where it, kind of love for outdoors always took me. She'd strap me into the back of the bicycle and we'd go cruise down to the beach. And she's a really, really special lady, super magical person. She just has a way with kids and way with animals that she walks into a room and lights it up. And so very fortunate to have her as a mom. And she was always inspirational and getting me outside and doing fun things.
I love that, dude. So what brought you guys to Colorado?
She married my stepfather, and he got a job at Copper Mountain. And so we came out here and started a new life.
Incredible, man.
So having a job at Copper Mountain, so were you just up on the slopes all the time at that age when you first got out here? Or?
Yeah, early on, my mom would just drive us up to the hill and drop me off either by myself or with my friend. It was kind of a laissez-faire, just drop us off and let us go. And one day I remember going up and I saw this thing fly out of the trees, and it was like a person but standing sideways on one thing rather than two things, and I was like, what is that?
because you were still skiing at the time.
I was still skiing at the time.
I got you.
And I was 9 years old, and I remember seeing that, and that was the first time I'd ever seen snowboarding, and
Wow.
I was with my mom, and I was like, what is that? And I was like, I have to figure out what that is. And so we were at Union Creek, which is like the beginner side of Copper. We got off the lift, and I beelined it down, and we found this guy, and I was 9. I could barely form a sentence. Was just like, what is that?
Just foaming at the mouth.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
excited.
Wait, what year do you think this was? How old are you?
So I was born in 81. I was
Okay.
9 years old. So this is like 89.
So we're talking
it's
very, very early in the
Yeah.
snowboard.
early on.
Yeah, early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always so crazy to me that snowboarding is still that young.
It is. It's crazy to think that it's kind of in its like third generation of riders, fourth generation now, and that I was kind of like the front end of the second gen. To think that how far it's come just watching the most recent Olympics and watching just videos of all the top riders, what's possible now and what was thought impossible then, and just how much it's changed. But the essence of it is still encapsulated in what I saw that first moment, was this guy coming out of the trees, setting onto one edge, and just this rooster tail of snow coming off, and that I still vividly, I can see that, and when I see it and describe it, I feel it.
Oh,
And
I love that.
he was a goofy rider, and he was on a hillside, and it just pulled away, and at that moment I was like, I have to do that, and so I begged and begged and begged, and Santa deposited a Burton 135 Performer Elite underneath the tree that Christmas. I slept with it that night, literally in my bed, and wore my snowboard boots to school, which they were enormously painful.
Breaking them in though, right?
I don't know if they broke in or my feet broke in. I think it was more the latter. And so that's kind of how the love affair with snowboarding started, and it kind of became the North Star for my life.
That's amazing. So was it like just that picture, like the rebellious nature that kind of drew you to it? Or is it just, you just don't know why you were pulled to it, just seeing him rip out of the trees?
That's a really good question. Nobody's ever asked me that. And I've never thought about it. At that point, when I saw it for the first time, it had nothing to do with rebellion. Had nothing to do. It was just, I'd never seen anything move that way. And that sensation that was somehow translated in the vision of it really resonated. And I knew I had to do it. And then the rebellion piece came in of like, you're doing something different. You're out there. I remember I had an instructor for my first couple times, and they had the Bad Boy Club stickers. I don't know if you guys remember those. They were like a stick. Yeah, it was a stick figure of this dude, and he had like a bicep, and it was a Bad Boy Club. Super lame now that I look back on it, but at the time it was like the coolest thing. And my instructor had that on his board, and I was like, wow, like now we're part of the Bad Boy Club. And it was, that part was a little bit, but for me, it was never the rebellion. It was never about the anti-society element of it, or the punk rock thing. I mean, listen to punk rock, grew up listening to punk rock, love skating, but that wasn't about it. It was always about the feel, the tactile experience of locking into a turn, or locking and going up a half pipe wall, and like airing out, and that feeling of weightlessness. All of those were always feel related. It felt cool to go to school and be like a snowboarder and not a skier, but it was never about the anti-establishment element. It was always about the sensation of boosting out of a pipe, and that feeling of weightlessness at the apex, or the feeling of power in the middle of a turn. So that was kind of
more soulful than anything.
Yeah, even without knowing what that was at the time of being a kid, that was just like, that was always the piece that was translated to me.
That's so freaking
Dude,
cool.
I
Man.
love-
They give
I
me
love
chills
that
just thinking about that.
explanation.
Yeah, that's
but it's totally right. Like, I remember, like, one of my most vivid and fondest memories as a kid dirt jumping and stuff was just this beautiful magical spot. It was a secret spot, and just being at that beautiful moment,
the apex,
and, it was just like the one day I learned how to ride dirt jumps. Never done it since, never did it worth a shit before, but that one day, and it was that it was that feeling, and it's just something that even vividly now, it's just so much. Or when you carve a corner or anything,
it's just like pure joy,
that.
right?
Well played.
Yeah.
No,
That's lightning in a bottle, man.
Yeah.
It is,
It's
and that's
something
what keeps you
special.
going back.
Yep.
And that's the pursuit of it. And that, I don't know, somehow, like I said, it became the North Star. Like that was always I sucked at school. I didn't like school. I wasn't overly intelligent in terms of school. Probably not in life either. But, you know, my mom could hang that carrot and say like, well, if you do this, then you get to go. And, that kept me on the straight and narrow path.
That's awesome.
So it worked in a benefit, despite being anti-establishment, despite being kind of the rebellion thing. In order to go snowboarding, I had to be good, so that my mom got to kind of work that against.
It's
the
kind
grain.
of funny. That's the way it works, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're a kid, you're like, you are doing something that is by nature kind of rebellious, right?
Yep.
Against the grain. And like your parents can like twist the screws a little bit to like steer you in the right direction by like dangling that thing over your head.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how that works. I've never thought about that either. So you get the Burton for Christmas. You've gone to a few instruction lessons. Where'd you go from there? Like at what point were you like, this is something I want to do more seriously?
Having grown up in Summit County, I was super lucky to be in an environment that was open to snowboarding, because a lot of mountains were still kind of 50-50 on that. And Keystone was the only one that was still no snowboarding. And so I would just go kind of weekend warrior. Didn't have any real friends that snowboarded. Everybody else was on skis. So I'd kind of end up by myself and just exploring around. Then discovered that there was a competition series. So they had like racing, and at that time it was just racing and half pipe at Copper Mountain, and that was the Rocky Mountain Snowboard Series. And which is to this day is still the oldest sanctioned snowboard series, I believe, in the world.
No
like,
way.
Continuously running, yeah. And so I went and entered, had no idea what I was doing, went around all the gates the wrong way, like finished and didn't get a time, got a DNF, didn't know what that meant, and it turns out it means did not finish because I went around the gates the wrong way. But all of a sudden I was like, cool. And that introduced me to a whole group of people that also snowboarded. And then discovered that there was a team, and what would actually at this time too, we used to have within the public school system in Summit County, we would have, I think it was 3 weeks during the winter when all students were required to go skiing 1 day per week.
No way.
And so they would take us out. It was really cool. It didn't matter what economic background you had, what class you were, whatever. The whole school would go skiing.
So was it like part of like PE or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that? Okay.
Exactly. It was part of the curriculum.
Wow.
And so everybody would get loaded onto buses and they take you. And based on your experience, you're beginner, medium, and intermediate expert, they would put you in these groups and you could go do your thing. And so during that period of time, during elementary school, I still had to go skiing. So I would be super sour puss on the bus. Like, I wish I could go shred and be bummed that I had to go ski with my buddies. But it's cool because we got to do that. And it was great for the entire public school system because they would provide all of the necessary equipment in terms of boots and skis. You'd have to come up with your own jackets and snow pants, but most people could do that through like clothing drives, thrift stores, stuff like that. So no matter what, everybody skied. And that was a great thing. When I kind of grew, and when I finished elementary and went to middle school, it turns out there was Team Summit, which is the oldest snowboard team that was school affiliated in the world. My mom joined on as a volunteer with that and helped that. And so we got to substitute our physical education credits with snowboarding.
Whoa.
So for 6 weeks out of the winter, we would be able to go and ride. We'd get out of school at like 12 o'clock. We'd sprint about a mile to the Summit Stage bus stop, which is a fantastic free public bus service in Summit County. And we would take that to whatever bus our coaches determined was, or take the bus to whatever resort we wanted to, because back then it was Team Summit. And so we had the Summit County Pass, which was A-Basin, Keystone, Breckenridge, Copper.
What an era, dude.
Dude,
Yeah.
I would be so stoked right now if that was a thing again.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
No, and that was the funny part. Like you'd go up the lift and you'd be going up the lift and people would be like, oh, where are you from? Be like, oh, we live here. And they're like, oh, you're so lucky. And we'd be like, where do you live? And they're like, oh, we live really far away. We live in Golden. And we're like, oh, well, like that's cool that you can at least come here in a day. And now you go up the lift. We do camps at Copper now. And you go up the lift and you're like, oh, where are you guys from? And they're like, oh, we live here. And you're like, oh, cool. Like you live in Frisco? And they're like, no, we live in Golden. And you're like, yo,
not the
pump
same.
their brakes. Like I appreciate the enthusiasm, but you're a city slicker. Like you're tunnel trash. Like don't claim here.
I love that, dude. Not a local.
Not local. So a little bit of gatekeeping, a little bit of localism right there. But
it's good for them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're going to drive your Tacoma up here with your rooftop tent. You need to have a little shade thrown at you. But back then, it was just, back in the day, as they say, it was cool growing up there. It was fantastic. And so long answer to your very short question, just started competing, not really knowing what I was doing. I ended up in a snowboard team, not really knowing what a snowboard team was, but somehow it was school affiliated. We got credit for it, so we didn't have to go to PE. We just got to go shred. And yeah, that was it.
And you get out of school at noon. Like how badass. That's badass.
For like
dude.
6 weeks. And you want to talk about anti-establishment, like walking out with your snowboard down the locker room hall with your board in hand past classrooms that are full of kids that are just scornfully looking at you as you're like,
later.
I'm going snowboarding with my buddies.
That's amazing.
That was a good feeling, especially, back then, like, it was still very, very fresh.
Yeah.
And so my mom was part of that with a guy named Don Sather who, formulated the first school affiliated snowboard team in basically the history of the world.
That's so badass that you were like part of that too.
Yeah, it
that's
was really
super
neat.
cool.
And it's not something that's really known or talked about. And, and it wasn't a prep school. It wasn't like,
this is just public school.
It was just a regular public school.
Wow.
They found a way to change the minds of a lot of different people to get them to be like, okay.
That's super cool, especially when it's so early on and like what snowboarding is, because like you're saying, there's so many mountains that were like, fuck snowboarding. We don't want that going on here. They hated it, So
oh, sorry. I'm just going to butt in right now just because I want to hear myself talk. But no, like, because it is in its infancy, like Mike's saying and stuff, who did you look up to? Or was it just a case of I was just out there having fun and this is what we do?
We were so fortunate to be on the beginning end, but also it was such a tough spot because like we never really had a lot of mentors. We didn't have superstars. Terrier wasn't a thing yet. Like those guys became it once I started to get to high school, but at middle school there was such a purity in it. Like we didn't know, we just went and rode.
Yeah, you were just doing it because you felt something.
Yeah, exactly. And then I remember watching my first snowboard video, Bert and Chill, and like learning about Craig Kelly and Jeff Brushy and Keith Duckboy Wallace and these guys, and seeing what they're doing and being like, wow, this is possible. And then seeing a snowboard film called Nido that was produced majorly in Summit County, and seeing what all of these local riders that were way older than us, we were just little booger eaters, and these guys are like, 21, and we're thinking like they're, the old authorities of the sport, and seeing what's possible, and they're, doing 720s off the same jump that we're doing 180s off of, and seeing that and being like, okay, so this is possible. But we didn't have like those. When I first started, I didn't know that there was, the archetype to be followed. I didn't know about Craig Kelly. I didn't know about Damian Sanders. I didn't know about these guys because it somehow was just like, I saw that I wanted to do it and I just went out and did it. I didn't know that there was a snowboard shop, one of the first snowboard shops in the world called Snowboards of the Rockies in Frisco, that I ended up a couple of years later working at. But like, I didn't know about these things. It was first all rooted in, that looks cool, I want to do that. And that was, it kind of stifled my own development, because like you just go ride.
Yeah.
And
you're doing your own thing.
You're doing your own thing. And so, and there's a beauty to that. But as far as progression always thrives when there's a role model to be emulated, something to be followed, someone that goes this big, you want to go bigger. And so it just kind of, for the first few years, it was kind of just almost like treading water. And then once the snowboard team started to come, then, you learn the top riders, because I rode mainly at Copper. And then you learn the top riders from Breck, and you learn the top riders from Keystone. And then all of a sudden you're in who's the top rider at this age, who's the top rider at this age. And then it started to kind of snowball. And then I started to specify in like half pipe and then racing. So parallel giant slalom and parallel slalom. And those were my two things. And I'd go back and forth and just do pipe and racing.
It's so cool to me, like progression aside, though, that you got to grow up in an era where you didn't have any like, I don't know if it's perspective or just like outside view of really what was going on. Like it was so real, like that there's not much in the world that's that way anymore that I can think of, that is like, hey, I found this thing that I love, and you can't like see other people doing it.
Oh yeah. You just get on social media,
like,
and
how
that's
cool
the whole
is
thing.
that?
So even then, in the like beginning times, it wasn't like there was a snowboarder mag every month delivered to your house, like that stuff hadn't come into
it's just so like ground level.
So there's nothing there, not even like, so the kids nowadays, you find a kid that's ripping on the mountain and he's like 8 years old. He's out there having fun with his mates and everything, but he's still like looking at all these pro athletes that he's just following on Instagram, thousands of them to emulate, which is sick for his progression curve. But like you're saying, like, you had nothing.
That's just a moment, dude. Yeah, that's a moment. Bowl. That's so cool. Yeah, so let me ask you this about Team Summit. So you said your mom was volunteer. Did she switch over to being a snowboarder at that point in time? Or was she a skier still?
Yeah. At that point, she was a skier for a long time. And then on her 40th birthday, she learned how to snowboard, and she still snowboards to this day.
Amazing, dude.
So yeah,
was that a hard switch for her? Do you think?
She came home. When you're a young kid and your mom has her 40th birthday, and it's like over the hill, and everything's black, and you're like, holy crap, my mom's gonna die soon. Like, now I'm over 40, and I'm like, wow, that wasn't actually that old. But back then, it's a totally different perspective. And so it was really hard for her. She took a lot of whippers, caught a lot of edges, but she did it. And, I went out, and she had a Burton Free 6 for her first board. I got her, a winter stick for her second board, and she still has it. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, still in the basement.
I love like the fact that she was 40 though, and like going out and pursuing something different after, I'm assuming for her whole life was skiing.
Yeah. I mean,
that's pretty crazy.
She's led an eclectic life. She's used to be a Playboy bunny. She was a blackjack dealer. She was a children's librarian. She was a counselor for disabled adults. Like you name it, she's done it. And she's a really, like I said, a magic person, and very unique, and always very supportive of just doing things that are off the cuff and against the grain, not to be rebellious, but just to kind of resonate with that feeling. And to your point about, we were in a fishbowl, like, and that was the coolest part. Now you can, your intuition is almost overshadowed by your impressions, because what you see kind of determines what you feel, versus like actually kind of almost being blind and having your other senses turn up. Back then we didn't have social media, so we didn't have our other senses being flooded with, you should like this, you should do this, this is cool, this is not cool. And we just had our buddies, and we had the feeling of snowboarding, and that was what we pursued every day. And we once the summit stage was set up, we would literally get up first thing in the morning, walk to the bus stop, but take about an hour to get to the mountain. You'd get there. You wouldn't even bring lunch money, because you knew that there was enough saltines and ketchup that you could just kind of get by on that at the resort. And you'd ride all day, and then you get on the bus and you'd go home. And I remember the bus would stop in Dillon, and I live in Dillon Valley. And it was one of the sickest powder runs that you could ever take. You'd walk across the highway from where the bus dropped you off, and you'd ride through like 6 people's different backyards that didn't have fences.
No way.
And it was all these lodgepole pines that were perfectly gapped. And we'd build little kickers to jump. There's 2 roads that we had to gap, and we'd jump the road and land on the downslope, and we'd ride down and jump the road and land on the downslope, and we'd pop into Sharon's backyard, my across the street neighbor. We'd walk through, wave at Sharon and Joe, and be home right before dark.
Dude.
And that was
Imagine doing that today.
Yeah, you'd probably get shot.
Like, that's so bizarre to think. Like, it just sounds like some cool, beautiful movie, It's like being able to live like that. It's like, it is just a moment in time. Like
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that people dream of, right?
Yep.
Like that could be like the intro to a snowboard movie. Like that's so freaking cool.
How was the feeling? So, because I know the bus you're talking about and that hour-long ride. I mean, you're probably getting on it early enough that the lift isn't even open until you guys show up. But I just imagine the anxiety. You know, when you're like, oh, the snow's falling, everything's going. Why the fuck are we stopping at another bus stop? Can we go? Can
Especially
we go?
when you're
Come
a
on, let's
kid.
go. Yeah, like.
You don't have any patience.
No patience whatsoever. But, you know, at the same time, you also had perspective, just inherent perspective. You knew that you couldn't rush the bus. You know, like it would have been nice if mom and dad didn't have to work and they could give you a ride. But you knew that this was what you had.
Yeah.
And so you had no comparative. And so you just sit down, and so you'd sit there and, you know, you would run because there were good seats on the bus and there were crap seats on the bus because you always had your board. And so like if you sat against the glass wall or like the plastic wall, then you could pin your board up and then you could kind of take a little Dr. Nodding off nap and just kick your head back. And then once you'd arrive, you'd be ready to roll. And back then, you know, we didn't have the population that we have that skis or stands in lines that we do now. And so, you know, lift lines were never really an issue. You'd get there, you'd lace your boots up on the last 5 minutes of the bus ride, and then you just get off and you just sprint to the lift line.
Oh my God.
And then boom, straight
So
onto the
dope.
lift, and you're ready to roll, and you know, you go bell to bell.
Amazing. So what age were you roughly when you're starting to jump on the bus like that? Is that high school era?
End of middle school to high school.
Okay.
Like, I'd have to look. I don't exactly remember when the Summit stage was kind of formed in Summit County. But it was a long time. You know, we were still in middle school when we were taking it from school. So I'm going to say that I was, you know, 6th grade probably. And then turned 16, got a car. My mom kept her 1971 Volkswagen Beetle, and that was my first car. And so at that point, then we had ultimate freedom. We would drive to the mountain, and then it was, you know, just fucking get her.
Let me ask you this about the Beetle. Were you throwing chains on there? Or were you just running it raw like a true mountain man?
No, right in the middle. I had studded snows.
Okay.
And I'd throw some sandbags in the front, and with all the engine weight in the back, plus the power in the back, and it was rear wheel drive, that thing was a machine.
It
was a machine.
Really?
Studded snows, manual. So you could actually
Just
control the
glued
RPMs,
to the road.
and you could do whatever you wanted that thing. And then in the summertime, it was great for when we take it up on Tenderfoot, which is one of our local mountain bike trails. We jumped the shit out of it, snapped the axle a few times. But it was great for jumping because all the weights in the back, so it would always land on the back end, so it'd never go front end heavy. But yeah, it was. I mean, Bertha, that was her name.
I was about to ask you.
What color was Bertha?
Yellow.
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 Oh my gosh, the
That's so
iconic
perfect.
bug, dude.
Yep. And there was a snowboard shop in Idaho Springs called Cruiser Brews, and I had a massive sticker across the windshield that said Cruiser Brews Snowboards, and that was the thing.
That's awesome.
So at what age were you starting to find like getting sponsorships and things changing? Or you seeing I want to race, and making those next steps from just doing it with your buddies, actually competing successfully, I guess?
You know, it started to compete and started to race and started to ride pipe and do both of those with, you know, some success, and racing a little bit more. And when the Olympics introduced snowboarding, that was a huge moment. And at that moment, I was like, I want to go to the Olympics for snowboarding. And I snuck in and watched the Olympics, Nagano, 96. It was 1998. Sorry. It was amazing. I grew up without TV because my mom was a children's librarian, so I didn't have TV at home to go watch the Olympics, and so I went down to where one of the older snowboarders, he was a bartender at a restaurant in Frisco, snuck in through the kitchen and watched from the kitchen through the bar to watch first half pipe and racing events.
Wow, you're like 16, 17 at that time.
I drove, so I was over 16, I think 16. And, you know, just seeing that, I knew before it was even, I knew that it would be put in the Olympics. I just felt it. Like it was too amazing of a sport, and the Olympics were too special to not have it. And I knew that it needed to be there. And so even before it was in, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And then seeing it, seeing Todd Richards get third, and then seeing just the racing, 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙈𝙇 got first. That's what I wanted. And so from that point, it kind of became a lot. It was even more of the thing. Like before, it was snowboarding was the North Star, and then all of a sudden it was becoming a professional. It was how do I do this? How do I do it? And then it was graduated high school, and it was like, okay, do I go to college? Do I go snowboarding? And went to college while going snowboarding, and definitely snowboarding was a priority.
Where did you go? Where did you go to school?
Just CMC, just Colorado Mountain College down, and they had back then it was a lot smaller than what it is now. But they had campuses in Steamboat and Summit County. So I started in Summit and then transferred to Steamboat when I moved there to pursue snowboarding.
What were you studying?
Oh, just whatever.
Whatever. Yeah.
Whatever they tell me. Whatever.
Yeah,
classes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just whatever you needed to get for your associates.
Heck yeah.
So just Gen Ed.
Awesome.
It was. There was some really cool instructors, professors, I should say, and I still remember some of those classes really good, and I took a lot of good things away from that. But for sure, it was not my priority.
Yeah.
It was just a means to an end.
Yeah. Did you struggle with like the Gen Ed stuff? Like you said, you weren't like the best student. Like it never interested you. So were you always kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out because of that?
I would say that the college curriculum and the college style suited me far more than high school did. High school was far more protocol based and kind of prescriptive of like, you will do this, you will do this, you will learn this. And I would do that in order to maintain, the 3.0 GPA that was required in order to maintain position on the snowboard team. Like that was the thing. Like if you had this, you could snowboard. If you didn't have that, you couldn't snowboard. So I found exactly what I needed to do in order to snowboard, and that was that.
Just the bare minimum
Absolutely,
of that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so once college came along and there was a little bit more free thinking, then all of a sudden it was a little bit more in that line. And I was associated more with that line. And so I enjoyed it, but for sure snowboarding was still the thing.
Heck yeah. Do you have a favorite course from that era?
Public speaking was probably one of the more fun ones, because that was like right in the peak of Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. They were both like
rising. A man of my heart. We're similar in age. I love this.
And we had to do a persuasive speech. And one of the guys in my class did a persuasive speech on why Christina Aguilera was better than Britney Spears.
Oh, it's bullshit.
I thought I went in thinking the same.
Yeah.
But the instructor was so good, or professor was so good, and she taught us so well. Like he did a fantastic job. And I came away thinking like Christina Aguilera is actually the better performer. As Britney still got a soft spot in my heart.
Do you remember some of the key points from that?
Yeah, number one, the Mickey Mouse Club called Christina Aguilera first. They didn't get in touch with her, so Britney Spears was a second. And Britney Spears made the Mickey Mouse Club because they missed Christina Aguilera.
Wow.
That was one of, and I mean, it's been, I don't know.
Can't argue
years.
that.
No, I was like, all right,
yeah.
she was an alternate, like, but cheers to the underdog. But nonetheless, like, I did enjoy CMC. I think it was a great environment, and, with them still being close to these mountains, it gives a lot of athletes and a lot of, students opportunity to be more than just a college crony, and to actually get out in the mountains.
Did they have a snowboard team of any type? Or?
No, nothing at all.
So it was just being in the mountain.
Exactly.
Like the access, essentially.
Yep. And at that point, we had graduated to graduate high school, and then had moved to like, you picked kind of your snowboard team. And so I was, at that point, my coach from Copper Mountain, Steve Stevenson, who owns a fantastic snowboard shop called Gravity, he sat me down and he's like, you compete in pipe and you compete in racing, but you're getting to the point, and snowboarding is progressing now where, back first gen, you could do everything. You could race, you could ride half pipe, and then border cross was starting to come out. Slopestyle wasn't there yet. Big air was just barely.
Yeah.
And so you could kind of do everything.
The jack of all kind of
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
But then it became like you had to specialize. And so he sat me down and was like, you got to pick. And, I love pipe and that feeling of the apex and just flying out and just getting above that wall and that feeling of weightlessness. But more than that, I love speed. And that was what drew me to snowboarding and the art of the turn. And I chose that. I chose racing, which is, definitely the redheaded stepchild of snowboarding. So went to join the Copper Mountain snowboard team and then went from there to Steamboat. And that's how I landed in Steamboat, where I still live today. Amazing.
So like choosing the racing thing, do you ever look back and wish you would have taken the red pill instead of the blue pill?
That's a tough one because, as they say, comparison is the thief of joy. And I traveled.
Well played. No, what do you mean they say? I've never heard that before. That's dope. I like that one. Anyway, sorry, continue.
No, and back then we used to we traveled a lot together. Junior Worlds teams traveled to, France and everything along those lines. And the race teams and freestyle teams all traveled together because the tours were the same thing. And so, traveling with the freestyle team with Elijah Teeter, Danny Cass, these guys that were top half pipe riders and would go on to become Olympic medalists and top riders in their own right. I always felt that there was, I would love to be able to continue to do both. But would I ever wanted to just pick one and go with the opposite? I don't.
Yeah, it's a hard like hindsight to look at, I guess.
I think that the honest answer, the brutally honest answer, is I would have loved to pick half pipe snowboarding, simply because I know that more peers would remember me for whatever I achieved in snowboarding had I gotten to the same level in half pipe, whereas most people don't know who I am because I chose racing.
Sure.
So on a superficial level, like on a very like deep heart answer, I would have loved the notoriety and the recognition, but experiential, there's nothing better than carving on a snowboard.
I love
that piece, it's the same thing that drew me to it when I was a kid, and it's the same thing that keeps me in it now.
Yeah, it ties back to exactly that feeling that you had, right? Like,
exactly.
There's a lot that's special. Like you can't put like notoriety on that. You can't put money on that. Like that is a special feeling to have. Like only you can have that feeling. And so to be able to draw it back to that beginning piece, I think is a very unique and cool thing. So I love to hear that. That's super cool. So going back to picking the racing thing, at this point, who are you looking at as like somebody who is like an influential person that's motivating you?
At that point, the Europeans were super dominant in racing. And so you're looking at Martin Fernandez, Dieter Krosnick. But what I always thought was really cool was that the Americans were always faster at speed disciplines and Super G. So you had Ian Price, who was he lives in Denver, actually. One of the most talented people in life. Guys, and you put him on a bike. The last time we rode was like 5 years ago in Park City. He hadn't ridden a bike in I don't know how many years. He jumped on a rental Giant, and he just jumped on. He's in the shop, whips it up into a wheelie, and he's pedaling in a 360, like just around the dude who's renting him the bike. And he hasn't ridden a bike in like 7 years.
And the dude who's renting it is like, we need to put some more air in that suspension, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
You are not the average guy.
So like looking at him, Ian Price was a massive inspiration. He was such a talented athlete and just fearless and very much in the anti-establishment, like very much a rebel and a renegade. And then you had like JCJ Anderson, who was a Canadian, who went on to be a 2010 Olympic gold medalist. And his style, because those guys always had cleaner carves. Like Euro was always straight and direct and just direct lines and just kind of what we'd call like just straight and late. And they'd hit the bottom of the turn, and it was effective. It was dirty, but it wasn't aesthetic. And I watched these guys that just rode the cleanest line, the cleanest edge at the top of the turn, and that's what I emulated, and that's what I wanted, because I wanted my riding to just be clean. And that's what I saw from the first time I ever saw snowboarding, was just a clean turn,
I
clean
like
edge.
that. Emphasis
so,
on the style a little bit.
Yeah. And so that's how I kind of, my style came about. And yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this for our listeners and everything like that. Can you give us a rundown on the two disciplines? When you say racing, like how many disciplines within racing did you compete in?
Mm-hmm.
And then like give us a quick rundown on what they are.
Yeah, no worries. So snowboarding kind of nowadays consists of, you've got half pipe, you've got big air, you've got slope style, you've got border cross, and those are the half pipe, slope style, big air are your three main disciplines for freestyle. On the racing side, you have border cross, you have parallel slalom, and parallel giant slalom. And I competed in border cross, but just for fun, just to take money off the border crossers, and then
Some lunch money.
exactly. And then my primary focuses were parallel giant slalom and parallel slalom, and those are side by side races, not in the same course, but side by side, very similar to biking. So like you have dual slaloms,
right?
exactly. It's the same thing, dual slalom, dual GS. Side by side racing, head to head, 2 men enter, 1 man leave kind of thing. And so yeah, that's the discipline that I specialized in.
And then feet are set up on your board, kind of toes both pointing towards the front of the board.
Yep. More aggressive stance, like 45 degree angles versus like a 20 minus 20.
Mm-hmm. 45. Gross.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for pure nasty speed, dude.
It's a different feeling. But people ask like why 45, and it's like, well, if you're squatting, you're standing in a 0-0 stance, right? Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to be efficient and walking on a tightrope, you'd walk in a 90-90 stance. So what's the middle point of 0 and 90?
Dude, that's pretty fascinating.
45.
Yeah.
So there you got power and efficiency, and that's where that stance comes from.
Amazing.
So another thing is, you've got hard boots. So they're plastic boots. So you can you can handle higher speed. You can handle forces.
More responsive.
Handle higher forces. Exactly.
Yeah,
more responsive.
Quicker
exactly.
responsive. Yeah.
Very similar to like a suspension setup in a bicycle. Like you can make it nice and sloppy, and you can make and it's going to be nice and fun, and it's going to be really, really flowy, but it's not going to be fast. Versus you ride a stiff bike and BMX. Like, why don't you guys ride suspension in park?
Yeah, it's just more responsive that way. Yeah.
Everything away. Yeah. You'd go this big rather than this big, right? It's the same situation there. And that's what these boards allow for. And there's something that is very similar. It's very hard to understand for people that have never ridden a race board. At the apex of a turn on a snowboard, the reason why the drawback to snowboarding versus skiing is the fact that it's not efficient. It's just not efficient. And when you're on soft boots, you come to this apex of the turn, and the board wants to go away. And so you'll see a lot of people scrub it. You'll see a lot of people take away the speed. On a hard boot setup, on a racing setup, you don't have to do that. And so the similarity is the same thing when you draw back to, again, a feeling on a bottomless day where you're not going to hit the hard surface on powder, on a snowboard, on a freestyle board. You can come in and you can lay into that turn as hard as you want. You can push as hard as you want. And that rooster tail just pulls away. It's just like butter. I can do that on my race board every fucking day.
That's amazing.
Oh, on an icy groomer?
On an icy groomer. It doesn't matter what it is. And that's the piece that why racing became so ingrained in what I did, because there was never a ceiling to that feeling. And if there was,
keep pushing it.
Exactly. It was me. It wasn't my equipment. To be held back by my equipment, that sucked. And so when you change your equipment, all of a sudden you could do it. And so that's the piece about snowboard racing that unless you do it, you'll never understand it.
Dude.
Well, I like what you're talking about right there. It's like, it is such a fascinating thing when you start to become the limiting factor. Like the equipment isn't, but you are as the person. So until you can outpace the equipment, which nobody will probably ever do, right? Like it's hard to, as technology progresses at the rate that it does, like it's impossible to outpace what the technology can do. So us as humans, we're always fighting that. And like, you're the limiting factor in almost every scenario. But when you're talking about in a competitive scenario, it becomes addicting, right?
Yeah. And then you want to just see what the next ceiling is, what can you do? What can you do? How can I push on it earlier? Can I push on it later? Can I push on it here? And that's and then, you get into this process orientation rather than goal orientation, and all of a sudden you become fanatic about it.
Oh, that's amazing.
I love this.
Yeah, this is good. Before we get too far into talking about the progression of your career, which is incredible, by the way, I want to talk about college a little bit more. And during college, there was a social media platform called MySpace.
Oh, cool. That's my chance. That's the only reason I'm brought into these things. Did you have a MySpace?
Never.
What?
Okay.
Never.
All right. So the whole thing, did you ever have a Facebook?
I did.
Okay,
I did and
yeah.
do. Did and do.
You did and do. All right. So on the Facebook platform, MySpace.
On MySpace, yeah.
MySpace platform. The whole thing of like, so you can choose a couple of things to really like show who you are to everybody, to the people. You get your background, your wallpaper, and then you get your song, right? So let's start with your song. If back then, okay, so let's say when would MySpace be?
Dude,
Like what year would that be? Like 95?
No.
That's
97,
98.
Yeah, from there to like 2006-ish,
yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so
10-year
let's
period.
say, let's say like 98, 99. What would your song be, do you think?
Ooh, I probably would have gone with something from AFI.
Oh, I love that. God Called In Sick Today.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, there was a huge phase of punk rock, and getting off school on Friday night, driving to Denver, going to a show at the Aztec, going to a show wherever, going to see Agnostic Front, Dropkick Murphys, and AFI in one night.
Oh my!
Getting a concussion from some Nazi in a big pit that I should not have been in.
Dude, I've got a similar story. Did it say "fuck this world" tattooed on his head?
No, he just had the mask. He had a massive swastika across his chest.
Oh no, mine
It
had
was horrible.
tattoos on the side of his head. Anyway, sorry, continue.
No,
But yeah.
But then we get up in the morning. But then we would drive back that night. I didn't drink. I was straight edge because of sport, because of snowboarding, which is kind of funny because snowboarding is anti-establishment, but it made me so that I didn't drink. I didn't do anything. And we'd finish the concert. We'd get back in the car, ears ringing, drive home, get up at 6 o'clock, catch the bus, go to the mountain. So like punk rock and snowboarding, that was it. So the song would have been AFI.
Incredible. Today, what would your song be?
Ooh, probably something from 𝙬𝘼𝙍𝙍.
Ooh, dude, 𝙬𝘼𝙍𝙍.
Yeah.
Love some 𝙬𝘼𝙍𝙍.
Yeah, my wannabe country boy coming out.
Dude, I love this new wave of like outlaw country like coming back, It's like, because I'm such a big fan of like Marty Robbins and that era of music, like Johnny Paycheck, and like now it's all kind of coming back full circle with people like 𝙬𝘼𝙍𝙍, and like, dude, it's insane. It's so cool.
It is. It really is, and it's amazing how talented all these guys are.
Charlie Crockett. Like, yeah, it's crazy.
And Sturgill Simpson, what he's done in the last like 3 years of the variety of his albums that have come out is just like, how are you the same person?
Yeah.
Like, it's insane.
You listen to every one of those albums that he's put out over the last like 5-6 years, and you're just like, whoa, it's completely different.
And 𝙬𝘼𝙍𝙍 as well. I mean, the songwriting as well as his voice has just been so, just different, and no matter what, you can always put I can always put it on when I'm driving, and I drive a lot, and that's just the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's driving music, man.
Yeah,
I always say, I'm like, that's the kind of music that makes me feel like I'm driving through like the middle of nowhere in Wyoming. It's like you just feel something when you listen to that stuff. So.
For sure.
So what did you do during like college and after college while you're snowboarding? Were you able to get jobs in snowboard shops? Like, what were you doing for money?
Once I graduated high school, presented with the situation of college full-time or snowboarding. I chose snowboarding, did college on the part-time. And then, coming from a family with my mom and I, it was just my mom and I at that point, with little means, I'd make ends meet. I had to pay for my own way. And so fortunately found a really great family that allowed me to live with them in Steamboat. My first summer, I came back to Summit County. I worked as a pizza cook in old Chicago, saved up all my cash as I could, and then went back to the mountains. And I would always focus entirely on snowboarding in the wintertime and try and make paycheck to paycheck from winning races. And then I started polishing shoes and carrying bags at a local golf course in Steamboat, and then eventually graduated to becoming one of the golf pros there. And then just solving.
Whoa, shut the front door. So we go from being a caddy, because when you say polishing shoes and carrying bags, that's caddy, right?
Yeah.
And then
much.
Become a pro.
Not a
teams?
pro. So there's a professional golfer and there's a golf professional. Golf professional is way different. Golf professional solves imaginary problems for rich people and teaches them how to hit the ball less shitty.
Still badass nonetheless.
It's an interesting career, and it's fun. And I was very thankful. I was super passionate about golf at that time, and so like golf was kind of my outlet. And so I just work out, play golf, and then just work at the golf course. And they were great. They would, if I had a camp at Mount Hood and I needed to go away, they'd help me out there. So super thankful for that. And met a lot of, it was really cool because Steamboat has produced more Olympians than any other town in the United States.
No way.
And the world, actually, Winter Olympians. Yeah.
Wow.
So kind of a cool stat about Steamboat. And so like a lot of them are members there, honorary members. And so like I would be able to see them, and I'm at the beginning of my career and they're at the end of their career. And to be able to see that, it knocked the idea of becoming an Olympian off a pedestal. It made it attainable. And so like, you're like, okay, if this guy can do it, I can do it. And so that just gives a bit, and that's what it is. It's, the incremental gains and the incremental self-belief. And incremental self-belief is just like, okay, if that guy can do it, I can do it. And, so just kind of, that's how I paid my way. And so
would you use that resource as an opportunity to like ask them questions, anything like that? Or were you on a very professional level? Like, you're here to play golf. I know my role.
Yeah, it's a private club. So everybody there is pretty fancy.
Yeah.
And they don't really want to talk to the kid carrying their bags. They don't really give a shit about your own dreams.
Okay, yeah.
And not to fault them for that at all. Over the course of, I was there for 10 years. And at the end of that, that community became very supportive of me. I had some fundraisers because of a knee injury and things like that, where I couldn't afford to pay for the surgery. And a lot of that community came out and and donated to that. And that was a huge help. So I'm super thankful for them. But, and I didn't want to sit there and like grab an orange and squeeze it for all it's worth. I wanted to hopefully let the fruit ripen, and hopefully they'd see the level of professionalism that I brought to my job and say, okay, this kid's good. And like, yeah, maybe, and then have it come out through an article in the paper of, oh, he made the US team or something along those lines. And at that point they could be like, wow, kind of walk softly and carry a big stick in a sense. And just, through that, a lot of people in the community who were kind enough to support me, and whether it be financially when I was hurt or just emotionally through, saying like, hey, but we believe in you and things like that.
Where do you think that wisdom came from to like not approach those people that you were like, oh, this is possible? Like, can you mentor me? Like, what do you think that like came from any specific place, or were you just kind of scared at the time to talk to them? Or
yeah, I think it was kind of a mix. I don't know if it's wisdom or fear. It was probably a mix of both. I think that just also understanding that I was still cutting my teeth. I was green as goose shit. I didn't know, I believed in myself, but I didn't have any accolades to do that. And one thing that, I've had a fair amount of success through my career, and I'm very thankful for that. But I didn't have a ton of talent at the beginning. And so that's another thing is, I wasn't some prodigy that could just be like, yep, I'm going to the Olympics and this is what I'm going to do. I wish I would have had that mindset a little bit more, but, I just always saw myself as a grinder. And so I didn't really feel that I had the position to ask for that mentorship or position to ask for that. And so, I think maybe it might come off as a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, but you just kind of put your head down and you do the work. And so that was kind of, I think, where it was rooted in.
That's super cool. Yeah. I think that's like, and there's like some respect involved in there too, right? Where you're looking at these people and you're like, wow, I want to do that. Like, how do I do that? And like kind of observing, right?
Yeah. A lot of observation, a lot of emulation, and a lot of being, and I kind of, part of it being like, I'm not going to do that. And like seeing other pieces of the way that they operate and being like, I don't want to do that. And I want to rise to a different level. I want to do it in a different way. And my career was very unorthodox. It wasn't, I don't think there's many people that would have gone the way that I did.
Heck yeah. So we're talking, you're working at the golf club, you're snowboarding heavily, working at the golf club in the summer. At what point do you go from that to being on the U.S. team? Like what did that process look like?
1 year. So you start and you that's one thing that's difficult about snowboarding in general is like you have this imagine a big map, and on it there's just like 1 point that's starting, 1 point that's professional, and then 1 point that's like X Games, Olympics, World Championships, and there's no waypoints in between, and there's no real established progressive growth chart where it says like, okay, you want to hit this, or you want to hit this, you want to hit this, which is like you look at Little League and it's like, well, if you're not hitting this at this point, then you're done. Gymnastics, if you're not doing this, if you're not doing a quad at this point, then you're done. And that is a positive to help kids like continue to strive, but it can also be a negative because like it can cut out a lot of people that are maybe late bloomers or anything along those lines. It can put far too much prescriptive protocol on development and not allow the individual to come out more. But snowboarding kind of lacks in this development chain, especially at that point because it was still relatively new. And so, you just you go from race to race. I had a fantastic, my first real coach, Mike Mallon out of the Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club. He's why I moved to Steamboat. He now runs an organization called USASA, which is the United States Amateur Free Ski and Snowboard Association. It's responsible for putting majority of the Olympians in for the United States and majority of the Olympic medals that come back. It's a fantastic organization. Wow. And I was lucky enough to have him as one of my first coaches, and he taught me a ton about being an athlete and even more about being a coach, which is what I do now. And so we just kind of started chasing races and taught me a ton. And then he left, and then we got a new coach, and Tato Remelink. He was from Holland, taught me even more about the mindset of racing. And we went to some races, and I performed well and beat some guys that were on the national team that were significantly older than me. And then I made the national team. But again, to the grinder point, like there was a couple other guys that were younger than me that had made it the year or two before. And, so I felt like I was slow again, kind of chip on my shoulder. Like I wanted it earlier. I should have gotten it earlier. Not mad at them for being great, just mad at myself for being mediocre. And, so yeah, had to strive and had to fight, but made it on there. And then, fought for a year on the national team, but not traveling to World Cup. And then, the way that it works is like you make national team, like Devo team, and then you make World Cup team, and then you make A team. And so, once you're in the system, you're kind of in the system, and then it kind of, goes forward from there. But a lot of this was unknown to me. And so it was just fight and kick the guy's ass, whoever's next to you. That's pretty much what it boiled down to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love like the image that you gave too of the map, right? Like, because you're basically having to be like Lewis and Clark out there where you're just kind of navigating uncharted territory. And like, it's crazy that it's kind of still that way today, right? Like
it is.
There's a lot of beauty, but there's a lot of ugliness involved in that, right?
Yeah. You can end up, treading water rather than swimming towards a destination that you think that is where you should go. And, there's a freedom in that. Because it allows for progression, and that's the beauty of like when you watch with board sports. That's the beauty of board sports. When you saw board sports in the Olympics, the Summer Olympics this summer. Well, actually, now what is last summer?
Yeah.
You would have the current sitting gold medalist cheering the loudest out of everyone for the person who's about to drop, who's probably going to take the gold medal and give them a silver and take a huge pay cut because of that. But that's not on the playfield at that moment. That's not in the park. No one that's competing cares about that at the moment. What they care about is progression. They care about seeing that person stomp that landing, stomp that trick, and get and earn that gold medal, and thus represent snowboarding to the high, or skateboarding or surfing or whatever it is. Biking was the same way. Yep. BMX was the same way. To the highest level possible. There's a pure altruism in that. That's a little bit, that's very rarely seen And I'm not a big believer in altruism. I think there's always something that's kind of, you know, Mother Teresa wouldn't be Mother Teresa if it didn't make her feel good,
Sure.
you know, like, but there is something in the pursuit of progression. There is some level of altruism in that. And that's very, very true within board sports and within BMX and these kind of extreme sports.
Do you think it's because like through progression, like we all kind of rise? Like it brings like, you know, everybody a little higher. Like when somebody stomps that next trick or like set that new fast time, everybody's like, okay, that's the next thing to beat. How do we do that?
A rising tide lifts all ships.
Certainly.
And that's 100%, you know, but you can only achieve that if you have a growth mindset. If you're based on a scarcity mindset, if you're based in fear, you're never going to see that. And I think maybe because like with extreme sports, I hate saying that, but like with these types of sports where there's consequences, like you realize that a person, I mean, you watched Rampage 2 weeks ago, if they mess up, like that could take their life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's real fear. Losing a game, even if it's the World Series, it's not real fear.
Yeah.
No one dies. Everyone goes home and everyone gets paid. Mm-hmm. These are also sports where like not the top guys get paid.
Yeah.
But not everybody's
if you're fortunate to be podium, you're getting paid. Maybe.
But you might also still have to polish some shoes, carry some bags, wash some dishes, do whatever you can on the side.
Yep.
And so like, I don't know whether it's the element that, you know, these types of athletes deal with scarcity every day, combined with the fact that they're putting their life at risk simply because they love it. I mean, there's something pure and beautiful in that's not present in.
I think that's something that always fascinates me about these types of sports is that you see these people in all these different types of sports that you've never even heard of before, and they're going faster than the fastest dude on the mountain, or they're going higher than the dude that's going super high, and like you don't know who they are. They're just like the local there, and you're just like, what is going on? Like this dude's not getting paid to do that, you know, but it is out of love. And there's something so fascinating about that to me because like nobody's playing football at the highest level possible and not getting paid. You know, Nobody's going to like their adult league in their town and like putting in this stupid amount of hours and like it just doesn't exist. So that it's very fascinating to me.
Well, I think also it's the thing that comes back to like if you ever talk to a professional, they're like, I do it for the fun of this situation, like in our kind of sport realms, right? And then, yeah, like you're saying, like every like slopestyle competition I go to, every like Rampage and everything, all the athletes, like when somebody's at Rampage in practice, they're all looking around because somebody's practicing, Carson's practicing his drop and stuff. Everybody stops. And when he stomps it, the place erupts.
Cheering.
Everybody is so stoked for one another and so stoked for the athlete. And that's the beauty of like this whole like,
it's community.
It's the community we have, and we are elevating one another. Like, dude, Nikolai Rogatkin, that dude can cheer on anybody. If there's a kid in the skate park who just learned how to bunny hop, if Nikolai's there, oh my lanta, that would be a hell of a show. But yeah, that's the thing.
I talk about that a lot, and you probably experience this a lot in your life now that you are in the role of being a coach. But like, you almost get that feeling that you used to get when you're learning something new, watching somebody like get that new best time or that new high air, whatever it is. You're like, oh my gosh, I remember that feeling. And like, you almost feel better watching somebody else do it, you know, like again, it's that progression mindset and like being excited for other people.
I think it's also kind of, I don't know, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but like you kind of get to a point where the ego isn't a part of it. So like for me, one of the things with photography is when I see a gram coming up that I'm like, in my mind, like, I'll never say this out loud, but I'll be like, oh, God damn, here's another one that's going to take my next job or whatever.
Yeah.
But when I see his work or her work, and I'm just like, dude, you fucking rock.
Yeah.
Like, it just clapping for one another, bringing one another up because
it's huge.
Yeah, we need to do that.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned consequence in the sports that we all choose to participate in. So at this point in your life, you know, we're talking about you getting on the U.S. team. Up until this point, had you had any major injuries?
No, I mean, major, no. I mean, I'd broken a lot of bones and I'd, you know, had some hardware put in, but no neck, no back.
Okay.
So no, very, very fortunate. I mean, you know, in in terms of Olympic progression, we always kind of looked at it I always looked at it from that perspective because it was such a goal. In 98 Olympics are, first in the Olympics, or the snowboarding's first in the Olympics in 98. And then you have 02 to Salt Lake. We were fortunate enough to go, and forerun. So we got to go and ride the course before everybody else.
That's cool.
And that was in Salt Lake. And Chris Kluge got third in the PGS, and then the American men swept the men's half pipe. So that was Ross Powers, JJ Thomas, and Danny Cass. And, so being there to witness that was just like, and, so that like seeing that was just fuel. And then, so that's 02. And then 06, I have a fantastic season in 05. One of the top rookie seasons for a young U.S. rider. But start of the 06 Olympic season, so it's still 05, 06, take a big crash and I snap my tib fib. Not a boot top fracture clean through, but hairline, and prevents me from riding well all season. I create the spot for the Olympics and I don't get to go.
Damn.
And so like, and that's tough. And then, that goes again, we go back and, that's 06. Now it comes time to 010 and, 08, 09, have a great season. Get my first World Cup podium. And then, something goes wrong with my knee. And all of a sudden I get tendonitis in my patellar on my left and left knee. And all of a sudden it starts to die and no one can identify why. And so like MRI after MRI, PRP injection, ART, MAT, every acronym you can come up with, I do it. And pretty soon I'm walking upstairs like an old lady, like 1 foot carry my other, and have to get surgery, and then, get surgery in hopes that I can come back for the next season, and just don't come back. And, so like 2 Olympic cycles, 8 years. And to miss the games for both of those, despite having the year before each time really, really like being the top American, and was really, really hard. And it ultimately kind of left me to retire in 2010 from snowboarding entirely, with a sour taste in my mouth, but just knowing that I had tried, and just believing that maybe I just wasn't good enough.
Damn, man.
No shit.
Yeah, I can't imagine, putting in work for 8 years like that and like tasting it, like just tasting it a little
It's
bit.
not just 8 years; it's his whole.
Your
life,
whole life
right?
into that point. But
And then
like those years are just, I'm sure, just painstaking.
How was it just like throwing the board at the wall, like fuck this shit, I'm out, I'm retiring, I'm done with this, or was it a calculated decision? Lots of thought through it.
Retiring was kind of the result of my longtime girlfriend at the time and I we'd planned to get married, and there was a lot of different just personal elements of like and trying. I'd kind of run out of try hard. I'd always ground to make it, and working 90 hours a week. I was working 2 jobs. I'd drive down to Home Depot and work in Avon, drive back, work at the golf course. And then on top of that, you're training in the gym, every day, 5 days a week. And I stopped mountain biking is a huge part of my life. It was big through high school. And then I didn't touch a bike for 10 years because I was, the only bike I sat on was a spin bike. And so you have all these things that you go for, and you kind of create this formula and you believe that you're going to do it. And then you fail, or you don't. And then you say, okay, well, why didn't I? And, that's a day by day. That's not a hard thing to do. But imagine if you go to school for 4 years and you're about ready to take the last test before you get your degree, and you're walking to get your degree, and you sprain your ankle and you're not allowed to take it, and you don't get your degree, and they don't allow you to take a makeup, or they say, well, you can take a makeup, but you're going to have to go to school for 4 more years. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, you're kind of like, wow, all right. And you know, maybe something gives you a glimpse, like at the, you know, following not making the team in 2002. I'm sorry, in 2006, we had nationals at Crystal Mountain, Washington, and I was super frustrated. I had a hard season. I hadn't really had any success after having a great success the year before, and went to nationals and I won back to back. So back to back national champ, and I was like, all right. And that gave me that spark that just said, okay, don't stop, you know. And I was very lucky my entire career, right when like the night was its darkest and there was absence of any hope or any light, something would happen. I'd get a finish that would just give me enough to see the horizon to keep going. And, you know, for that in 2006, it was those two finishes. It was like, all right, I got to keep going, you know, and so you refocus, and then, you know, 2000, you know, that builds all the way up and you're getting faster and you're faster. And then 2009 comes in right before the Olympics, World Cup before the Olympic season. I get my first World Cup podium, first GS podium from an American male in a while. And I'm like, yes, like this is it. This is going. And then, you know, the start of the next season, and all of a sudden, you know, my knee's gone and I can't ride. And, you know, it was just, you know, it was hard to walk away from, but it was the plan. Mm-hmm. And I you know, I wanted to start a new life. That lasted for about 2 years, and I realized that. I was
about to ask. Yeah.
I had a sponsor come back and say, hey, we think that you have some unfinished business. And my old coach came back, and we went dirt biking down in Crested Butte, and he was like, you know, I think you got something to do.
Were you snowboarding at all in that time, or were you just like, fuck this, I don't ever want to see a snowboard again?
Yeah, I mean, I was snowboarding a lot and riding POW and just enjoying it, but I wasn't racing, I wasn't training, I wasn't thinking about it.
Kind of getting back to those roots of seeing that guy fly out of the trees. You wanted to feel that feeling again.
Yeah.
Because I feel like probably that's the hardest thing, you know, you're putting in all that work and you're kind of getting further and further away from that first feeling that you experienced, right? Like,
very true.
You're putting all that sacrifice in. You're working the 90 hours a week. You're sitting on the spin bike, and like the thing that you actually love, you're not getting to do unless you're out there competing. And
you also are, you're always comparing it to what it could be.
Sure.
You know, and that's the thing is, you know, you can have a great run, but it could have been better.
Mm-hmm.
It should be better. Coulds and shoulds.
Yeah.
And rather than, and you kind of have to live in that world if you want to continue to progress. But like, if you don't take the time to actually, you know, savor what it does experience, the good experience, you can very, very quickly get burned out.
I feel like it's tough too. Like, you've talked a little bit about like, you weren't the guy on the mountain with the talent. So you're the guy putting in all the extra work, and like when it's not panning out, you know how much time you're putting in the gym or like on the hill, or you just work 90 hours and then you have a bad run. You're just like, dude, what the fuck am I doing? Right? Like, that's a hard spot to be in.
And couple that with like just being angry in general, because you already know that you're not the most talented, and so like you're carrying the weight of your own expectations and the chip on your shoulder, and you're just kind of like
just underdog,
son of a bitch, you know, like and expectation is a really, really dangerous thing. Like you kind of need it, but it's a fickle mistress. Like it can, you know, and there's a reason why it's prevalent in all of these Buddhist sayings and Stoicism in terms of expectations will ultimately lead you to disappointment. But if you don't expect it, because expectation, like personal expectation, what you expect of yourself, and hope, they're not that different. You know, if you don't believe, and self-belief, if you don't believe you can do it, you don't have hope that you can do it, and you for sure don't fucking expect you can do it.
Certainly.
So like how, and as a 20-year-old or 24-year-old athlete, how do you have that emotional intelligence to recognize when expectation, self-belief, and hope have kind of melded into one kind of malignant being? And how do you separate those things and say, I'm really thankful to be here, and I still believe in myself. I don't need to expect anything. And fortunately, when I came back to snowboarding, I was able to do that because I left in a lot of pain, both physically and emotionally. And that 2 years gave me the ability to reset. I learned a lot about my body by going to do an MAT therapist program down here in Denver. And that changed my whole mindset of how to approach goals, how to approach my body. And I got to come onto the snow with no pain. And I hadn't had that in a long time. And so I was just fucking pumped to get back to feeling that turn and feeling that experience.
Well, that's like one of the questions I wanted to ask, is like, how do you bounce back from injury? So like, talking about this career ending injury, like you went and did this program, you're figuring out like, okay, this is how I can respect my body a little bit more, respect my brain a little bit more and my well-being. Is that like taking you further then? Like you're looking at that kind of stuff and saying like, okay, I can now approach this equation in a different way, right?
Absolutely.
It's changing the game for you. So is that kind of how you're still at this point in time, like bouncing back from the injuries?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, kind of what we talked about earlier in the podcast about how when you have role models to look up to, and people like you see somebody hit a gap in a park, or hit a transfer and you're like, oh, I never even saw that. I never even would have thought that was possible. Recent project, Braden, Canyon Rider just pedaled up the whole enchilada. You're like,
it's insane.
It's insane.
Right? Yeah.
It's insane. And like, he's an amazing dude. Yeah. The real deal. But no one would have ever thought that was possible because you just wouldn't ever think. It took a creative mind to go to that place and to say, maybe. And that comes from perspective. That comes from the ability to draw back and see a bigger thing and say what inspires you and say, what fuels a fire. And so being out of the sport for 2 years, having retired with pain, I'm not going to say retire from an injury, but retire with pain and ride with pain. And all of a sudden to be back without pain, boom, all of a sudden perspective's there. Gratitude, creativity comes in because now I can push on my board where I want to push and I can do the things.
You can kind of reinvent who you are. Yeah.
I can create rather than react. I can act rather than respond. And so all of a sudden I can make what I want rather than be kind of boxed in. And that's the double-edged sword that is the blank map. Because at this point now I'm kind of on my own. I'm living out of my truck and I'm reset on my goals. And most people say, wow, you're living out of your truck in the middle of winter. This sounds pretty brutal and you're trying to pursue an Olympic dream. No, it was the most beautiful blank canvas I ever had because I could do exactly what I wanted. And
that's true freedom right there.
Exactly. And I could ask myself, does this serve me? Does this serve my goals or does it not? And for the first time, I kind of could clearly see on this blank canvas how I could draw my own line to my goal rather than being stuck into a national team program of saying, this is your coach, this is your program, these are the criteria, this is what you got to do. And I could kind of retreat back into the creative artist phase, which is where, slopestyle and half pipe and a lot of those other pieces and that kid exists where you can create your own piece of art. And so my life became my own art, my own work. I don't want to call it art and sound all because I don't think it was that fancy, but like it became my own work. And that's where I, all of a sudden fell back in love with biking, fell back in love with spending time outdoors. My trainers in Utah were fantastic. They would purposely, Tashana, she would help me to make my program so that I could do my workouts on my bike and I wouldn't have to be glued to a spin bike.
Amazing.
And, but that came from, know thyself. Like the number one tenet in Stoicism, know thyself. And prior to that, I didn't know anything. I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know why. I didn't know how. I didn't know anything of that. And so once I understood who I was by being removed from what I loved for 2 years, then I could kind of put myself into that. And it wasn't so prescriptive. It was more authentic.
Yeah. Well, you can start living a life of intention that way. I almost feel like too, instead of just kind of like you're saying, you were kind of running through the motions. You had a program that was laid out in front of you and like, other people were doing that and maybe it worked for them, but it wasn't working for you. It doesn't sound like, and you were kind of having a hard time. So like being able to remove that and kind of break it down and say, okay, how can I be intentional with what I'm doing with my life? How can I quiet the noise around me and focus on exactly what I want? And do I really want that? And why do I want it? Like, that's living a life of intention is so important for that reason.
When your sponsor came back to you and said you got some unfinished business, was it very kind of like, we want to see you back winning? Or was it, we feel like we could work with you in a different capacity, still based around racing, but let's try and work with one another?
He's a good friend of mine. His name is 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙀𝘿. Is one of the first Red Bull athletes ever. Runs a snowboard company called SG Snowboards. And he came to me very gently and very much as like an older brother or father figure would, and said, "Yeah, I think I just think that you have more talent and more potential than you realized, and we want to support you in achieving that." And so there was no pressure of like, and this is what we're going to do. There was nothing like that.
Right.
It was purely just, and Ziggy is an amazing guy. He's, when you look at all the past Olympians and past medalists in the past, in snowboard racing for the past, 12 years, for 90% of them, Ziggy's had a very instrumental hand. And whether they won on his boards or not, he was there for their development. He has a fantastic eye for people that have ability. And I'm very honored that he saw that in me. Because that, there's kind of two pieces to that. Like when my mom in 2006, after missing the Olympics, I was devastated, and I was riding up the lift and before nationals, and I didn't know what to do, and I called my mom, and she was like, "Justin, you can't believe in you don't believe in yourself right now." And I was like, "You're absolutely right, I do not." Mm-hmm. And she's like, "Well, think about all those people that believed in you when you were growing up." And she mentioned all these guys that I used to race with, and Ed Stracy, Ron Rupert, Pete McComber. And you remember how much those guys believed in you, John Mulstay. And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "If you can't believe in yourself right now, think about how they believed in you, and take their belief and put it inside and scoop out whatever's telling you can't." And so I literally would scoop it out like pit in my stomach, and I draw it out, I put it on the side, and then I think about how good it felt when those guys gave me a high five after a good run when I was like 9-10 years old. And that gave me the ability to believe in myself. And so, hearing that from Ziggy, fast forward to 2012, one of the legends of the sport, Olympic bronze medalist, I was like, all right, if this guy believes in me and sees something, then maybe I can see something. And so, yeah, that's, it came from a place of care, and that's really special. Again, you go back to that board sport, that extreme sport progression element. He wasn't like, it's not like he's talking to Derek Jeter and saying like, "Oh, I'm going to sell so many shoes when this guy comes out of retirement." Like
it's coming from a place of genuine care, right?
Yeah.
Like that's special.
That's
super special. And it like takes a very special person as well to recognize talent.
Absolutely.
Even when like you're saying, you're like, I'm not a talented dude. Like that guy saw some talent there.
Something.
He saw some heart, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but like he saw something, and that's really cool.
Well, do you think also that you not having faith in yourself, or you not seeing talent in yourself, had something to help you that made you drive that little bit harder? That you were like, well, that dude's got talent, I've got to work twice as hard to get there. But you also had that talent in there somewhere a little bit. So did you get what I'm asking?
Oh,
there?
totally.
Like, yeah.
Totally. Mike and I were just chatting about
hating
that.
yourself.
Yeah, before you got here, we were standing out in the roastery, and we were literally just talking about this exact thing, which is kind of funny. So
yeah, I mean, I think self-esteem is tossed around a lot, and especially in our generation, it was never really broken down. It was like, oh, low self-esteem, high self-esteem, and then the conversation ended. But esteem, the word, means worth, self-worth. And I think that a lot of the people that are the top athletes in the world have a pretty empty cup of self-esteem. They don't have a lot of self-worth. And the reason why I say that is because if you have something intrinsically telling you that you need to work harder to be the best in the world, better than you, if I have something that's telling me that in order to have worth, I need to be better than everyone else in the world, that typically comes from a pretty dark spot where there's not a lot of self-love, there's not a lot of self-worth. And so, yeah, I definitely believe that I didn't have a lot of that. And that grit that made me work harder, fight more, chip on the shoulder, be a dick, whatever. Like, there's definitely an empty cup there, and and now as a coach, it's so much easier to fill up, because I'm not judging myself by my finishes. You know, if you finish fourth, oh, I am fourth. You finish first, I am a winner. I didn't win, I am a loser. You know, like, you don't, as a racer or competitor, you have a tendency to naturally do that. And the environment that you surround yourself in does the same.
Right.
You know, you call your parents and the people that are supposed to be unconditionally there for you. You say, oh, I got second. They're like, oh, well, next time you win. And they don't mean they don't mean that in a bad way,
no, for sure,
at all. You know, and my mom was not that type. My mom would be like, oh, that's great. She loved it if I got DFL. But like, you know, that's just the environment that we tend to grow up in, is like, you know, you are what you finish. And it tends to be, it's a very, very lonely existence for athletes, because it's always that you lose, we win. And that's a hard thing. And most people, like, you know, and you can read it now in people's posts, and you know, it's subconscious. Like, if someone does very well at an event, they say, hey, I'm so thankful for my team, we did an amazing job. And then when they lose, they say, I really messed up, I didn't take this. And like, they don't, and they mean to do that in a sense of to give grace to their people, because they know that their people tried as hard as they could and they just didn't do it. And
they feel like they let people down, they let themselves down. It's hard. So do you think, you know, when your sponsor came to you in 2012, it started breaking some of those barriers down for you? Like, did you start recognizing these things that we're talking about at that point in time? Like, you had 2 years off and you're like, oh, wait, this guy, like, who am I right now? And this guy's coming to me and like, he wants me to come back.
I think that it was a combination of, you know, having, you know, one of your idols believe in you or believe in me and show me there was potential. Helped me to see that there was potential. And I think that it was, you know, over the course of those 2 years, I started doing therapy. I started just doing a lot and kind of diving into, you know, personal development and things that I wasn't stoked on and I wasn't proud of and that I wanted to change. And so I think it came from feeling the external belief from others, and then having more intrinsic knowledge of myself. And those two things, and then being able, from those two perspectives, to have the support of others, that I knew that I wouldn't fall back all the way to the bottom, and that I could achieve the top. Or I believe that I believe that I now had new tools internally, mentally, that would allow me to achieve a higher summit. And that the valley, should I fall, was not as dark as I thought it was, and that I could climb back out.
I love that. That's a great perspective to have, and it's a great experience to have gone through as well.
That's 100% sure, because
not a lot of people, like, when people go through experiences like that, not a lot of people will use that as a learning moment. You know, you talk to a lot of people who've been through some really rough stuff, and like, they kind of dwell on that. So like, you know, it's cool that you were able to be perceptive enough to be like, okay, I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to learn a little bit more about myself, why I tick the way that I do. And so props to you for that. And then anybody listening, if you're going through some hard shit, like, reach out, dude, go get outside, do something, like get the wheels spinning. 'Cause like, it's not as dark as you think it is. I promise. Like,
no,
life gets better.
That's definitely true. But one thing I think I noticed when, through that last answer, you skirted around the whole thing of, because this is something that I talk a lot about with people, is that it's okay to, it's not okay, but like, that cup's empty, you know? So when you come back, it's still like that grind of like, Everybody else believes in me, so that gives me the encouragement. I've now got new tools to look at maybe a loss differently, and I can build on that in a different way and look at the silver lining and build. But still, fuck the world. I need to work twice as hard as all you bastards. Was this still that?
The cup is, the cup is never full.
Perfect.
The cup is never full.
Yeah.
And that's just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
And it's a constant reminder to understand that maybe there's not that much in the cup, but there also doesn't need to be much in the cup.
You still have the cup.
You still have the cup. Absolutely. Yeah. And those things that come in and out are transient. The wealthy man, we talked about this earlier, like the wealthy man doesn't have everything. The wealthy man is happy with what he's got. Mm-hmm. And if you just got the cup, like that's okay. And that's a shift in perspective. That's not necessarily a shift in have and have not. And to have, you can have a Bugatti, you can have high self-esteem. Those things are like, it's one is physical in a sense, as just as the other one is. I think that you can also just say, hey, I don't have a lot of self-esteem right now, but that doesn't mean that I can't do good.
Yeah.
And that I can't do the right thing and I can't move forward in a positive way. Because you still have the cup and you choose what you put in that. And granted, mental illness and depression and things can make it very, very hard to grab the things off the shelf to put in that cup that would be beneficial. Yeah. They can make it damn near paralyzing to do
Certainly.
that. But like, recognizing where you still have something, as minute as it may be, is still a massive, it's a massive realization. And, that's a little bit different and a little bit deeper down the line. But when I first came back to snowboarding, it was, I had some new tools that I could put in that cup. It didn't necessarily fill it, but it made me realize that I at least had a cup and I could put some shit in there.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's dope.
So it's 2012. You've got this new fire lit up underneath you. You're living in the truck. Where do you go from here?
The truck thing started. I tried living down in Denver for a bit. I lived with my best friend, Craig Jones. Great dude. And
great name too.
Yep. And super, super thankful for him. He helped me through a hard time, and but I couldn't deal with Denver, the heart of darkness. I was just I couldn't handle it. And so like I moved to Park City for a month in order to train. And just ended in 1 month, ended up kind of living in my truck for like 3 years. And so like, just kind of snowballed, and I learned that I could save a ton of money on rent and things like that. And, it was nice. And then it started to get a lot of attention from like different sponsors, and I could actually leverage what I was doing because it was a unique story. It was something that was different. And, and it wasn't hard. It was like, because we had the training center in Park City, so I'd get up in the morning, I'd have first breakfast on my tailgate. I slept in like a 1970s sleeping bag from my mom. It was before I was working with Big Agnes, and it was like a flannel lined Cordura on the outside. It was so comfy. I still use it as my guest room.
Amazing.
Like on the floor now when people come visit, and they're like, this is the best bag ever. And I'm like, yeah, no.
Like, put that in that bag. I've seen some stuff.
Yeah,
man.
Exactly. And so I'd get up and have second breakfast inside. We had the chef in the Center of Excellence of the U.S. Snowboard Team and Ski Team building in Park City. I'd go work out with my trainer for like 3 hours, get done, have lunch, be able to take a shower. I'd go out to my truck. I'd drive over to whatever trail I needed to do. I had all the trails and all my workouts for my biking. That's when I started working with Yeti cycles, and I'd go out and I'd do the ride that I needed to do, and then I'd come back to my truck. I'd cook up some breakfast or some dinner on the tailgate, and then I'd park somewhere where I could poach internet, and that was it. Or I'd just go up and drive up into the woods and sleep with the chickens and the goats. Like, it was super, super simplistic. It was very monastic in a sense, and allowed me to focus on what I cared about.
I love it. Well, it kind of goes back to that eliminating distractions, right? Like when you're in a house and like you probably would have roommates at that point in time, and it's like people are wanting to go out and have fun or whatever, you can just like kind of be by yourself or read a book or whatever it is, and you can just be with your thoughts and really focus on being intentional. And that's cool. And it's cool because like you were kind of ahead of the curve in terms of like this new van life craze. That's like the thing right now, you know?
Yeah.
You kind of set the precedent for what that is.
Yeah, it was I mean, there was no, I didn't have a solar panel. I didn't have anything. I had a jug of water and a 𝙎𝘾𝘼 camp stove that was older than I am. Still have it. It's great.
It's in your guest room.
Yeah, exactly. With the, you guys want some coffee? Whip it up yourselves.
Yeah.
But here's some traction beans. No, but it's, it was great. And people, during it, that was another piece is like, you have the opportunity to have an obstacle or an opportunity. You have a choice. You really have a choice. And, during that time I was going through a divorce and it was not an ideal situation. And when I'd sit down with press or whatever, because leading up to the Olympics, I had just gotten silver at World Champs before the season before that. So like everything's going really, really well. And the press would sit down and be like, oh, you're living in your truck. It must be so difficult. And it's like, no, this is awesome. Like it's a nice truck.
Like this is a choice.
It doesn't break down on me. Like I'm choosing this, and I make no illusions around that. Like I'm grateful for this. And it's something that I choose. I could easily choose to go and rent something, but that would potentially mean that I can't go to this race or this opportunity or hire this coach or hire this whatever. Like these are choices, and it's okay.
At this point in time, when you're living in the truck and you're training, are you still working like a 9-to-5 job anywhere, or are you just like
the first
just
time in my life
focusing?
that I got to finally like be a true professional snowboarder?
Amazing.
By way of living in a truck.
And is this through like sponsorship funded?
Sponsorship, and then my
Being on
finishes
the team.
prior to the year had garnered me certain stipends from the USOC, and then prize money, which I got silver at World Champs. I didn't even know you got prize money at World Champs, and all of a sudden I got like $20K, and I was like, holy shit!
When you're living in the truck,
yeah,
that's
and I was
big.
like, this
I'm a
is
millionaire.
real. Yeah, exactly.
I can buy a lot of ramen noodles.
Absolutely. And so like those types of things aligned that all of a sudden I could fully dedicate myself.
At that point in time, who are you riding for?
I was riding for SG Snowboards and SG Pro Team, which was the affiliate of it was a co-branded thing with Red Bull.
Okay.
And so those are the two main guys that were with me, and I'm super, super thankful for them because they made it all possible. Great boards and just a great collaboration with Red Bull. That's an amazing company. There's companies out there that exploit athletes to sell their product. And there's one company in the world that exploits its product to support athletes and progression, and that is Red Bull.
Certainly.
And they do more for this sport right now, for sports.
Yeah. I mean, all the things that we love, right? Like, none of them would be
Where
at
they
the
are.
level
No.
by any means of the word. Like Red Bull has put everything on a different freaking level. Like, we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, right? Like people, are doing things now that were never thought possible then.
Video games.
Yeah, video games. Like, dude, there's like, I joke around about it a lot. So there's a BMX video game called Dave Mirra Pro BMX 2. And there are certain tricks that you cannot do in that game that exist today in real life. Like, it's freaking bizarre to me. You know what I mean? Like, the physics of a video game could not rationalize what is existing today.
That's so cool.
That's mostly in part because of a company like Red Bull.
Yep.
And that's, it's cool to hear, like, you give them the accolade because you've been through it. And, like, they're amazing.
They give wings. I mean, like, that's a, ticky marketing line, but, like, the reality is wings give elevation. They elevate the game.
Certainly.
And that's cool to see. So, those guys were hugely part of what I was able to do. And then I started working with Topo Designs and Yeti. And so, and Big Agnes, kind of all Colorado brands. And and it also worked to try to kind of just help me to do this adventure lifestyle. And so we'd work out in the gym nonstop 5 days a week, and then weekends the gym would be closed, which is kind of a bummer for me because then I lost my place to shower and cook. And so then, but we just kind of started like cruise down to Zion and do like our spin workouts down there, and that was really cool because then it allowed me to kind of tap in a little bit more to just just riding for fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you get the silver medal in 2013
Oh, wait, what?
at the World Championship.
World champs.
Oh,
Yeah.
my.
So
Well
we're
played.
going from that into the Olympic year. What did
Yeah.
that look like? Like, what was the selection process like? How did you figure out that you were getting to go to the Olympics?
Oh, we could have built that up so much better, Michael. We could, like,
Yeah.
for the listeners out there, like, he came back from injury. All right, so sorry.
No,
Continue.
but it's it was a good season. It was my first year back, and I rode well. Second year back technically, and I rode well. And going into the 2014 Olympics, I was going to be in Sochi, Russia. Season started off, and there was a lot of pressure on myself, and I was the top American and kind of looked to be the sole American to represent the U.S. in parallel giant slalom and parallel slalom, so those two disciplines. And unfortunately, I didn't ride well. Like the pressure was too much, and I was afraid.
And you were the only American male there, right? In those
Ended up,
disciplines.
well, on World Cup, no, there was multiple males, but they were younger and upcoming riders, both of which and 4 years later ended up representing the U.S. in the Olympics. So, I was kind of the senior member and trying to show the way, and but I just wasn't riding well. And then I took a big crash in Steamboat. Compressed my AC joint, couldn't really move my arm, and all of a sudden I started to think like, okay, it's happening again.
Oh.
And kind of same path, same destination. If you ride the same trail, you're going to land at the same place. And I started to kind of feel my mind going to that same place, and because physically it works, but it also works mentally. If you believe one thing, whether you believe it is or it is not, you are correct. If you believe you can or you can believe you cannot, you are correct. Like it's that simple. And so started to feel things go kind of haywire. And was able to put down two solid results in Austria and Bad Gastein in a slalom that kind of gave the U.S. team a little bit of faith in kind of giving me the nod for the Olympic team. And a few weeks later, I was at a local coffee shop and take and bake place called the Drunken Onion in Steamboat Springs. A great breakfast burritos, great espresso there. And got the call that said, "Hey, you made the Olympic team," and like instantly broke down, called my mom, and I was super excited. And just huge weight lifted off my chest. And we had one more World Cup before the Olympics. Went to that and got my second GS podium in a World Cup. So I was like, fuck yeah. Now I like, it's time. It's time. It's all happening. No more same path, same destination, like new path, new person, new idea. Was really motivated, to go in with a podium in the final GS before, and, just got to the Olympics, and, something I've never admitted publicly, but it was the worst and loneliest 3 weeks of my life. It was one of the most hard times that I've ever had, being a sole representative on a team. It was really difficult time. Didn't perform well, and just really the pressure got to me, and it was a hard time. Really, really thankful to like be able to have that opportunity and to experience it. So happy that my mom, who was my biggest cheerleader, got to go and
that's cool.
Stand in the stands during opening ceremonies and like walk in. But like it was just it was a really hard time to be there as a sole rider, like all that, because you have like 4 pipe riders, you have and then 4 slopers, and then 3 slopers, and then you had border cross, and then you had 4 border cross, and so like,
and you're the only one,
and I'm the only one for
discipline.
Alpine, for snowboard racing, and so like those guys, and not to any chagrin, like they're supposed to, like that's your team, like that's your family, and I was just kind of a misfit on the outside of it.
You're kind of isolated there by yourself,
and so and like I did my best to try and be as as positive and everything along those lines, but it definitely it was hard. And the head coach of the U.S. snowboard team at that time, total It just not a good dude.
Damn.
And really made my trip way harder than it needed to be. Like, you know, all those guys, pipe and border cross, got to stay down in this super private hotel with fancy chef and everything, and slope and race all had to stay up in the like athlete part. And like, you know, and I needed a piece of for my uniform in order to race, and he had kept it, and like I had to go all the way down and outside the security zone to get it, like days before the race.
Just like mental games.
And it's just and you're just like, very simple question. As I am an athlete, am I here for you, or are you here for me?
Certainly.
As a coach?
Yeah.
Like, it's a very simple, you know. And like the day before the morning of the race, all of a sudden the U.S. team, like best intentions, like, yeah, they assign you a doctor, but they don't take the time to have the doctor come meet you on a training day or anything like that. So like, I'm going to get in the course to inspect, and all of a sudden this big dopey guy who's, you know, there volunteering, kindness of his heart, he's a doctor from wherever, which is how the medical staff works. They're all volunteers. He's like, "Oh, are you Justin?" And, "Oh, I'm so-and-so. I'm Dr. So-and-so." And I was like, "Well, that's wonderful, but I'm trying to compete for the biggest day of my life." And, you know, granted, that's my absence of perspective. That's me, you know, like there are things that happen to you and there's how you respond. And, you know, I try to do my best to be as quiet and as calm and I, you know, certainly friendly and say, "Hey, thanks. Nice to meet you. I'm going to go inspect now." But it still affected me. And so, you know, as much as those days were really hard, I got to see one of my best friends, 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙬 go back-to-back gold medals. And that was really cool. And I also got to, now being a coach, take away from that 2014 experience of how miserable that was. I know exactly how not to allow that to happen to my athletes now. And I'm
really cool.
Really thankful for that. And I'm by far a better coach than I think I ever was an athlete. But thankful for those opportunities. But yeah.
Well, I'm sure like you get to the Olympics and you're expecting this like grand event, right? Like if you don't know what to expect, you don't know what to expect. And you get there, you've put your whole life on the line to get there.
Yeah.
And then you have this coach who's just like, you'll figure it out. Have fun in isolation, bro.
Yeah.
And you're probably looking at the people you're racing against who are probably there with teams, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
You know, and that's got to be, I can't imagine, dude. You're like isolated as hell.
It's like
and you're watching these crews of people rolling with their friends and they're slapping fives and you're just like, well, I'm here by myself. This is really hard. I can't imagine.
Dude, I know. Well, I don't know that feeling, but I do know the feeling of just being so lonely and you're at this opportunity where you're just like, I've been working so fucking hard to be here in XYZ, wherever it may be. And you're like, I kind of just want to cry and call my mom. Like, I genuinely am so fucking lonely. I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, I'm sure, like, I don't want to speak for you, but if I were in your shoes, I would have probably been in my head pretty heavy, like looking around being like, why am I not getting the support? You know, why have I worked this hard to feel this way on this day? Like,
should I even be here? Like, yeah, exactly.
That's crazy, man. So
yeah, I mean, that was you know, there was one rider that you know, I've always looked up to. Danny Davis is a fantastic rider.
Oh my gosh,
just style,
insane.
Yeah,
those switch methods.
That's exactly. This is where the story's going. Actually, we're walking into the opening ceremonies. I mean, the Olympics are always kind of a crapshoot because you got to stand outside for opening ceremonies for like 2 hours before you actually go in because they have to line everybody up and it's a whole production, yada yada yada. So we're just standing there, and so like, you know, and Danny's standing there, and I'm like, "Hey, Danny, my name's Justin. Like, I just wanted to introduce myself and say, hey, and like, huge respect for riding pipe the way that you ride pipe, and your switch method is the sickest thing in the game. Like, it's amazing, and I just want to tip my hat to it because it's like, it's what snowboarding is, in my opinion." And he's like, "Oh," and Danny's like amazing, nice guy, and he's like, "Oh, that's so cool." And he's like, "Oh, so are you a coach?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm just a snowboarder." And you know, and that, like, it's not Danny's fault. It's not anybody's fault. Like, and it's I picked an obscure part of snowboarding to participate in. It was my choice. And you know, and he was, "Oh, that's so cool racing." And like, I told him, and he was like, "Oh, that's so cool. Racing's rad." And, you know, super, super nice. But like, you can't, as an athlete, and you like you said, you pour everything in, it cuts. And it's not him. He did everything right.
There was no intention.
No.
Sure.
And Danny's is a stellar dude, and a styly dude as well. But like it was just the accumulation of like just these micro injuries of the ego that allowed, and so that I allowed, and so it was a tough go, but as a result, it came away with learning a lot, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, how did you finish up in that event?
Oh, I have no idea.
You don't even know?
No, I don't even know. Yeah. No,
it might be better that way then, I guess.
Yeah, no, I did poorly in the GS, and then in the slalom, I disqualified. I went inside of a gate, which I hadn't done before in 10 years, and I haven't ever done since. Like, yeah, things just didn't go well. It was a total flop.
Dang,
like,
man.
Yeah, you work, your whole life to get there, and then, yeah, just failed. The most epic failure that I could possibly construct, and walking down and seeing my mom, almost tear up thinking about it, just feeling that I let her down, and everybody else at home, and just everybody that had supported me, and and just botched it. And
that's got to be a big weight to carry too, is like, you have all these people who are like watching, they're like watching to see what you do, and they're hopeful that you're going to be walking away with what they know you're capable of. And like,
God damn, way to rub it in.
No, I'm just, yeah.
No, but it's absolutely true.
You're coming down that hill, and like you see your mom standing there, and that probably all sets in, right? And you're just like, fuck, man. Like,
yeah.
Damn.
Well, pressure ahead of the going in there. I'm sure that was another aspect of just like, oh, I'm going to be on TV.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Olympics, and you build it up to be, whatever you want it to be. And snowboarding is ultimately, I don't think necessarily for the better because of the Olympics, but it still was a huge part of my life and the way that I look at it. You look at other people like 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙀𝘿 and Todd Richards, and these guys are going to have their opinions about it. But for me as a young kid, it was the thing. Yeah. It was the thing, and you can't take that out. Like if you feel it, you feel it. And to get there and to implode in such a spectacular way. But the one thing is, I think there's only I think there's only one person that it really affected. It was me.
Certainly.
Like, it was my own implosion. It was my own letdown. It was my own ultimate sadness. My mom was still happy that I got to go. She could see that I was hurt, and so she was hurt.
Yeah.
But
what
all
an
of the other
accomplishment.
Yeah,
like,
whatever.
It's huge, man. I mean, think about how many people go through like their whole career like with their eyes set on the opportunity to just go to the Olympics, right? Like, think about you as that young kid who was watching the dude pop out of the trees on the snowboard. Like, yeah. That is like insane to, it's that perspective thing, right? Like, just to think about even stepping on that hill, that's an incredible moment. But then you put it on all those other factors, and it's like, it's hard, man.
Yeah, and I think that that's a very good point. Like, if you draw the line from that kid that saw that guy pop out of the snow, pop out of the trees, 30 years, 20 years prior to, and you tell that kid that one day he's going to be here, you'd be like, and that's something that's talked about a lot in professional sport. They'd be like, well, no way, that'd be cool. Mm-hmm. But, in the end, a lot of times, it's easier to see what we didn't do than what we did do. And so I think that, especially when it comes to like that large childhood dream, you can all too often find yourself kind of settling into that shit, if only things could have been different. And I, in all honesty, I don't think about that. Like, had I gone back-to-back gold medals, like, my life wouldn't be ultimately that different. In fact, it might be even maybe less, because, ultimately what those things did, they gave me a greater separation from snowboarding, because the season after that, I came back and decided to compete for another year, and was third overall in the world, won my first World Cup. Like, I think a lot of other things would not have happened had I not had that personal implosion. And so I think that, and then ultimately I think that deep sadness and loneliness that I experienced there, which again was my choice. Like I did that. I'm not trying to put it on anybody else. Like my experience there allows me currently to better empathize with my athletes that I currently coach and to formulate better environments for them to be successful. And I think had I rolled into the Olympics and had an amazing time and shit was just, candy corns and Reese's peanut butter cups, like, and pats on the backs, like, I don't think I would have the perspective now as a coach to understand what it is that those athletes are facing when they stand in that start gate or when they drop in and they're ultimately alone. Because that's one of the loneliest places you'll ever be.
Well, because you as the coach, right, you can only do so much to prepare somebody for that. And so when you're standing there in that gate, like, and I know that feeling from like racing BMX, like you can do all the preparedness, you can do all the thing, but then the guy in the gate next to you is making some weird noise and he's getting in your head and you're just like, all that goes out the window and you're like, fuck, what am I doing? Like everything is just different. Like, people can creep into your head if you're not prepared and like, or the lights, the sounds, the smell, whatever it is, like that, it all changes when you're there by yourself. So it's cool that you've had that experience and like, it hasn't been the most like picture perfect, like raining Skittles and like high five to be able to prepare other people for that. Yeah. That's very unique. And, you've talked about like having these coaches that have either been great or have been the complete opposite of great. And, the bad ones really set you up for failure. So the fact that you get to be a good coach through those experiences is fucking awesome. Like it's very unique, So
I'm super thankful for it.
Yeah, it's awesome, dude. So we go from Olympics. You continue to race after that, correct?
Yep.
And then in 2016, is that when they decided that event wasn't going to be in the Olympics anymore?
Yeah, it was leading up to what would be the 2018 Olympics. They the IOC violated one of their own bylaws by removing parallel slalom to remove, because we had two racing disciplines. We had parallel slalom, parallel giant slalom. And they said that slalom had been added because dual slalom had been added because of Russia requesting it. But then they had never taken it off. And so everyone was preparing and training for two events in the 2018 Olympics. And then inside of, I think it was like 180 days, they pulled one of the events. And so in looking at the, documents, it was very clear that was not allowed. It's one of their own rules. Like no one else wrote it. No one else broke it. And so they pulled it. And so it was originally supposed to be a union of riders that would go after the IOC to say, hey, like not to sue the IOC, but to raise the question through litigation of saying, yo, you broke one of your own bylaws, which all of us have invested money in, countries have invested money in, people have invested money in training. Can you please put this back on the thing? And you can call it for 2022. It's only one day of events. And so the union of riders bailed on the last minute. It kind of boiled down to me and one of my lawyers who's also a snowboarder. One of my lawyers, I say that like I have a retainer. I don't. He's a good buddy of mine, and he was like, "Hey, let's try and get the IOC to do the right thing." So we went after the IOC to try and get them to put the event back on, which the IOC did what the IOC does to athletes, which pretty much tell them to
two middle fingers up and say,
"Yep,
good luck,"
attached to a fist, and boom. And so yeah, it was a bummer. Learned a lot. Sad to see that, because I think that we deserve to have two events there. These athletes work so hard for 4 years. And you look at swimmers, they get to swim 5 meters, 10 meters, 20 meters, 15 meters with the backstroke, front stroke, breaststroke. Like, come on. Like, it's not fair for all these athletes, pipe riders to get there and you have one event, and it's on one day. Mm-hmm. So, but we tried, we lost. That was that.
Yeah. Is that kind of like when that happened, is that kind of when you started thinking about like, this might be the end of my professional career? Or were you like, I'm going to still continue to go to these other events and aim for, the singular event at the Olympics?
At that point, we still had a giant slalom, giant slalom in the Olympics. And so, still full gas ahead, like let's train with that. But my passion for the sport was definitely wearing. The grind was just kind of becoming back to what it had been before 2012. I'd started to kind of lose the love, lose the creativity. I did a lot of things in the summertime to try and find more creativity. Biking the 14ers, biking the Colorado Trail with Joey Schuessler, who you guys have had on the Traction podcast.
Dude.
That was kind of all of ours. My best friend Craig, Sam's, and then Joey. I went to pick up my new Yeti from Yeti, and he's like, "Why are you getting an Arc?" Which is our hardtail. And I was like, because my buddy and I are going to do the Colorado Trail. And he's like, no way. I was thinking about doing the Colorado Trail. And I was like, yeah. He's like, could we do it together? And I was like, yeah, I don't care, dude. What's your name again?
Yeah.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah. And so that was how that whole thing kind of came about. And we ended up doing it. And the film's on Vimeo. It's a cool thing. It was really cool because none of us had done anything like that. He
actually talked about this on his podcast.
Oh yeah,
yeah, which is super cool to hear it. Yeah, that's so cool.
And it was because we just kind of threw it together. None of us and I don't think any of us have done anything that long. Because it's 550 days, and we didn't know what we were doing, so we brought batteries for the entire time rather than
oh man.
So we had a lot. We had a boom. It was full production, and but so summertime, I started to look around and try and find different things because snowboarding just didn't have the same fuel anymore. And so, but ultimately what brought me to retiring was my coach, 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙬𝘼𝙍 at the time. He got cancer. And so he was the last piece that was keeping me in snowboarding because I was enjoying riding with him and I wanted to see what I could do under his wing because I knew he was a great coach. And when he got it, I knew I didn't want to go back to being, because I'd for a long time on the road, I traveled by myself, I coached myself, I would come back to Steamboat and work with my local team in Steamboat, but being on the road, I was always kind of the lone soldier, and I didn't want to go back to that. And so, and I also had a small team that we had built, and I was done. I was actually on a motorcycle trip in India with one of my old sponsors, Royal Enfield, and that actually talk about same path, same destination. That was a totally different path. India, as cheesy as it sounds, is totally a place for awakening. And that was the first time at 18,000 feet where I could all of a sudden be oh, I don't have to be Justin the snowboarder anymore. I can be whatever I want. And that was a trip that allowed me to kind of separate,
that disassociation of you're bigger than what you think you are, right?
Yeah. Or I can start over.
Yeah.
I can do something completely that I've never considered or anything. And so, and at that point it was just, I'm going to stop snowboarding. And so I got home and, retired.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you go from that, where does the coaching come in? Did you take a few years off? What did you do in between the time of retiring to coaching? Were you just going after being kind of that adventure athlete that you are today, or were you?
It was actually, it was 2017. It was leading up to the Olympics in 2018. That 2017, 2018 was going into that season. And I realized that the team that we had created, that was 4 people, myself, Esther Ledecka, Robert Burns, and Michael Trapp. So Esther's from Czech, and then myself, Robbie, and Mikey are all from the US. We had created this small little pro team. And they just lost their coach, Eric, and now they would lose their senior team member. And so it left 3 of them completely without any guidance or coach. And so I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I don't know if I can fill Eric's shoes, but, I'm willing to step in if you guys want. And, and so it's kind of just took over for him and ran that program. And, yeah, it was interesting. It was cool. Very, very grateful. Mikey executed his goals, made the Olympics, and Esther executed her goals and then some, and made the Olympics, and then won back-to-back gold medals, and one in skiing and one in snowboarding. And I was
chill.
chill. Yeah, just regular Monday, Tuesday combo.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then Robbie, he had a solid season, marked by a lot of personal growth, but didn't make the Olympics. But nonetheless, had some really, really strong riding, and that's kind of what launched the whole coaching piece. And so, yeah.
And that's what you're doing still to this day, yeah?
And now I try and help people to snowboard better.
That's awesome.
Nice.
And are you traveling around the world like with a team doing that, or?
Yeah. So I started, in 2017, and now it's 2022, I think, almost 2023. And I've done 2 Olympic cycles. I work primarily with Esther. She's my sole athlete, and so work with her, and and we travel around the World Cup tour. And in the past, I've had developmental athletes as well as some elite training partners that we recruit for Esther. And so just kind of construct highly personalized camps and season-based progressions that are utilizing a lot of cued training and a lot of different training theories and techniques that I've developed over the last 5 years to help people go faster on snowboards.
That's badass. Are you also looking around for up and coming talent and seeing how you can help them, or are you kind of just set on Esther and the folks that you're working with primarily right now?
Because Esther's her calendar is very sporadic, and while she is completely absorbed in skiing and snowboarding, it affords me the opportunity to, when she's skiing, I have a little bit more time off. So I do a lot of volunteering with younger riders in different environments. So I'll do a lot of that. And then, as I mentioned, I have in the past, for the past 4 years, I've worked with 2 younger development athletes, both of which have really progressed a lot. And so Iris, she got second at Junior Worlds last year at Junior World Champs. So she's graduated to a place where she needs more external motivators. So she needs a team environment, and I can't do that and create an environment for Esther because the two don't work. And then Dylan, he's stepped up to become one of the fastest guys in the US, and he is in the same situation. And so while it pains me to do so, I kind of have to step back and let those guys go and cut their own teeth with a different team. And I'm here for them, and we stay in communication all the time, and we still work together. But the young guys have to kind of grow up and cut their teeth and get dirty with the other kids in the playground. Because right now it's, and it allows me the opportunity to spend some more time at home now because it's been pretty intense 4 years. And, yeah.
Let's talk about home a little bit. So Steamboat's home.
Steamboat is home.
When you're home, like, what's your routine look like these days?
Normally I'd be in Europe right now, but we've had to change our training schedule a little bit. So right now I'm at home. Sad that it's snowing because I missed my bike, but jumping down to the desert when I can. Home for me is just time to be close to nature, and also just do a lot with taking photos and riding bikes and connecting with people, and kind of go on little, I don't want to call them adventures because they're not that spectacular, but they are pretty awesome, and they're good times.
I don't know. When you say
That's
not
relative.
that spectacular,
Yeah,
I'm like,
relative
I was just
is
going to
what I
say,
found
like,
out. Yeah.
your Instagram is probably my favorite to watch because you're always like somewhere super dope, and like the photos that you're taking are spectacular. And like, I don't know, it's just, yeah, you motivate me to want to get outside a little bit more.
Thanks,
so yeah,
Wow.
it's really cool. And like seeing how you've kind of transitioned from being this, professional Olympic athlete into being like almost like a lifestyle athlete, and working with these different really cool brands, and like the way you've integrated all of those things into your life is really cool. Like, how is that progression for you?
The progression for me has been kind of blind squirrel finding a nut. I got a camera in like 2014-ish and just started taking pictures, just a crappy old Canon. And then Got a Sony a few years back and just been kind of toting that around, and then recognized that I wasn't competing anymore, so there's no real legitimacy to brands keeping me on. And so in that sense, you have to kind of create a value for a brand to continue to want to work with you. And I got a lot of my sponsors when I was snowboarding, not by approaching companies within the snowboard industry, because the snowboard industry could give a shit about snowboard racing. Like it's not relevant. But I also realized in that situation that you have 20 different athletes that all do the same thing, going after the same company. Like everybody wants to ride for Oakley, everybody wants to ride for Burton, everybody. And let's say they do that, and let's say Oakley sponsors them. Well, who watches snowboard videos? 9 times out of 10, it's just a bunch of other snowboarders. And so you have this very incestuous little pool of saying like, oh, you should buy Oakley, you should buy Oakley. Well, all those people already know that. They have what are you doing?
100%.
Like, why are you speaking to? You're just an echo chamber of sales.
Yep.
And like this year, oh, now your favorite rider rides for Smith. Okay, so I'll go buy some Smiths. And then in 5 years, then your new favorite rider rides for POC. So now you're going to go ride some POC. Like, you're not actually encouraging new people to buy new product. And that, if you're a business, wouldn't that be what you want? And so when I was snowboard racing, I just looked at it and I was like, well, what else do I like to do? I like to bike. I like to fly fish. I like to hike. I like to backpack. Okay. And I live in my truck. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go after industries that have completely different customer bases that aren't relative to snowboarding in any way, shape, or form, aside from the fact that they completely are, because chances are the people that backpack also ski or snowboard.
Yeah, it's all there's overlap.
There's overlap. There's cross-pollination. And so that's exactly what I kind of looked at in terms of like, well, now that I don't snowboard anymore, I still have the title. I'm very thankful and fortunate to have the title of Olympian, which gives a little bit more, I hope, validity than flight attendant or barista, that in terms of an influencer or someone that might help to guide someone in terms of purchasing new gear or buying something that will work, and so that's where I kind of looked at, how I can utilize the social media platform that I garnered through athletics to then, help brands to reach new people. And then they can also utilize my role as an Olympian so that they can say that they have an ambassador that is X, Y, or Z, rather than, oh, look, this is Joe. He went to wherever.
It's true though. Like, I
and,
see where you're coming from.
And so
it's freaking awesome. And like the brands that you've chosen to go after or that you do work with, like, they're also unique in their own way, and they have so much equity in terms of what they do. They're very genuine brands, and I think that that's really cool because that speaks to who you are too. You're not like, okay, who can pay me the most amount of money to like hawk some bullshit today?
Yeah.
And I think that's like a big problem in kind of all the industries that are like action sports related, or just as an influencer for that matter, or an ambassador. A lot of people are just kind of going with whoever they can work with, and like. Yeah. The partners that you've worked with them for such a long time, and like, yeah, it's cool. I mean, the way I found you was through Topo. Yeah, like that's like the first time I ever saw like something of Justin. I was like, dude, this guy's sick, because like I just love Topo. Like they're sick, man. And the fact that you get to work with brands like that, it's super cool. So
no, it's super fun, and I try and utilize stuff that the things that I would actually utilize whether I was with them or not. You know, and that's, I'm very fortunate that they see a value in that, and I hope that it works out. And, that's kind of, and now it's just kind of a fun thing. And that's a very cool piece of it too, is I don't, a lot of these guys are out here trying to like, and they take way better photos than I do. They would do amazing things. And I just try and, tell from my perspective, like, if I'm going to do these things, these are the things that I use, and they're pretty rad. Yeah. And if something sucks, I'm definitely not going to put it on my Instagram. And so like
that's why I never posted on mine.
Well, you just have stuff that's
just over the shit.
But like, yeah, I think that is, you say like, oh, people take better photos than you, but like, I don't think that there's a better photo than a photo that's genuine. You know?
True.
And like, there's a lot to be said about that. And like, who cares how great the photo is if it's not real and genuine? And like, if you're not talking about things that are real and like that you can actually use and benefit you, then why the fuck are you doing it?
Well, dude, I think there's also the whole thing of like, we're talking about photography right now, but anything is, as far as like, if you're proud of it almost. Like, I'm never proud of any of my work. I hate
Same.
all my work. Fuck it. It sucks. I suck. But but putting it out there, and then it's like, I've got it in my head, like, I couldn't give a shit how many likes I get on something. But there are a couple people in there that I'm like, as long as they've seen it, that helps me on my business side of things. But my main thing is just like, this is the goofiest picture of my bike that I just posted, and it's got all this cloud coming in and yada yada. That's all just, and I spent an entire day making that image, and I was just like, I kind of fucking like this.
Yeah.
Fuck everybody else. I know
That's
it's
all that
weird
matters.
as shit.
Yep.
That's all I care about. Let's put it out there.
That's all that matters,
it's
dude.
just like, fuck everybody else.
Yeah.
I hate them, and I hate myself, and I
Oh
hate my
no.
work. All right, continue.
Do we need to have a
No,
James
it's
therapy
fine. It's
session?
fine.
No, you can put hate in your cup. That works too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean
Sometimes that's a good fuel.
Self-hate.
it absolutely
Usually
is.
that's the best fuel.
There, I mean, doubt drives men forward.
Yep.
Like it's a very it can be very cancerous, but it can also provide you the motivation to move forward. Like, you can't always just get up because you know the sun's shining and My Little Pony soundtrack's playing in the background. Like, you know, sometimes you gotta Goggins the shit. You just gotta get up and you just gotta do the work. And like, you tell yourself you love it in the moment, but you can hate it.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes that disassociated positivity doesn't work the way that you want it to. In fact, it like works against you and it makes you want to stay in bed, right? So
Yeah.
like, that doubt makes you sometimes get up and like, okay, I'm firing on all cylinders today because like I'm going to prove to myself that I can maybe.
Yeah.
So, well, as we get into kind of wrapping this up, you know, you're a Steamboat guy now. You live downtown. Where's the best place to grab a cocktail? Since you shook us up an incredible cocktail, you are the guide right now. Tell us where the best spot is.
You know, like there's, you know, well, let's see. Laundry is a fantastic spot. You know, it's owned by a group of restaurants that kind of all share the same ownership, and they do a great job. It's one of their finer restaurants. But I also like Barley, downtown Steamboat. It's a tap house. It's locally owned. And they have, and I'm not a beer dude, but they also have some good cocktails attached. And so, you know, that's a go-to spot, and it's always fun because you can ride your bike straight down the stairs right to the front door.
That's cool.
You know, and you can kind of scare the tunnel trash because typically there's always one or two of them sitting out front. And you know, they have a good cocktail
I love
there.
tunnel trash. That's my favorite. I don't know how I've never heard that.
Yeah, I dropped it on some guys in Moab because
Yeah.
we were like riding, and they were like, "Where are you from?" I was like, "Oh, I'm from Steamboat." And they're like, "Where are you from?" They're like, "Oh, we're from Evergreen or wherever they were from. I don't know, Longmont, whatever." And
6 and 2 3s.
yeah, and I was like, "Oh, tunnel trash," and they like instantly like clammed up. They stopped talking. They were like,
They just wrote
they were like
off.
fully offended, and I was like, "Well, I thought it was kind of funny." But
Yeah, it's awesome. Are you
Yeah,
kidding
yeah.
me? Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Are you riding over to these the cocktail spots with the Southside skid marks?
Oh yeah. The Southside skid marks are in full effect, and on the townie. You know, like that's one thing. Like, you know, good resort towns, you got to have a good townie bike, and so I've got an old like 1950s Schwinn American, no grips, a coaster
Ooh.
brake that sometimes works, and
yes.
yeah. So that's the chosen mode of transportation.
I love that, man.
Yeah, it's a good time.
And then what's your favorite trail that's like rideable from where you live? I
Ooh.
guess, you know, don't drive far, but you can
Yeah, no, I
drive.
mean, that's a cool part. Like, I mean, a few years ago, or well, let's see, pandemic summer, I was out riding, and that's honestly what I think is so cool about Steamboat. Steamboat's not the most aggressive place in the world, in terms of like Jackson, Crested Butte, all those places that have like gnarliness. It's a gentle valley. But, you know, I can ride from my garage, and I can ride some amazing trails. And so, like, if you want something that's cross-country oriented, you can go up and you can just pedal on Emerald Mountain. You want to go down to the Bear River Bike Park, we got a nice little dirt junk track.
Dude,
We got a
it's
skate park
nice.
there,
yeah,
too.
the skate park is super
Yep.
good.
So you got something for big wheels, small wheels. And then, like, one of the coolest loops in Colorado, I think, is I can ride from my house. It's 40 miles. It's 90% single track, $5,000 of climbing, up $5,000 straight down.
Wow.
And it's all bike specific pretty much. Like, you climb up Spring Creek, you climb up Flash of Gold, Upper Flash of Gold, you climb over to Soda Mountain, which is one of the most awesome, super technical climbs if you like climbing. Most people don't, but I do. You climb all the way up to Soda, and then you have just a ripping downhill all the way back down. In the town, you finish on Grouse, which is one of the best newly built trails in
I've heard
Colorado.
great things about Grouse.
Super spicy, with some good alt lines. And then you finish on Spring Roll, which is a nice downhill specific jump line, all the way into Steamboat. And you can do 40 miles and like $5,000 up, $5,000 down. And that's
perfect.
It's a unique situation. Most people won't ride that because you're going to want to you want to finish it on an enduro bike, but you want to climb it on an XC bike. So it's a beast, but you can't get that in many other places where where it's consistent up and consistent down, and you don't have any road transfers. Like Crested Butte, you go there, you got to ride like 5 miles, a couple miles here, a couple miles here on the road. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there you don't have to do that. And it's a really very unique loop. And so
sounds like we need to go up to Steamboat in the spring, dude.
Yeah. You can ride the moto up and grab a mountain bike down. Go. Yeah. But no, there's a lot of good places. And it's so green there, and
this last summer was like the greenest I've ever seen it.
It's crazy.
It was insane,
vibrant,
dude.
Yeah.
That was when we were coming over for the Yeti gathering.
Yep.
We came over Rabbit Ears, and we dropped into that valley, and I was like, I have never seen it look like this here. That was mind blowing.
I was like plugged in.
It was so cool.
Yeah. The foliage season this year was fire too. It was really cool. And that was all over the state because we were lucky enough to have a lot of water this summer. Yeah. So it was super cool.
Yeah. Little fires, lots of good leaves. Best year.
Yeah.
Good
best
stuff.
Year ever.
Yeah. What's something that people don't know about you? We've talked about a lot of really good things, but what's something we haven't covered that they don't know about you? Probably the hardest question of the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one because, what most people don't know, I don't know, I guess. A pretty open book. I don't, I guess, on surface level, I'm not a video dude. Like, I'm not a video guy. I'm like, we were talking about it earlier, I'm a still guy. I don't know what it is. I think that, watching videos is absolutely stunning. And I'm so stoked when I see a good video, but I have no intention of ever creating through videos. And it's hard for me to put on a video to film something when I'm out, riding something or anything like that. And even if it's like I'm riding, I'll do it for video review, but to tell a story through video, it's so something. I don't know what it's about.
Yeah. I love that though, because we live in an age where that's just as much content as you can create. It's mostly video, especially with TikTok and Instagram Reels, and it's kind of killed the photo. And me and James talk about this a lot, how frustrating it is that it's the platforms that we love that were photo based aren't that way anymore. And I appreciate your feed because it is pretty much all photo. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, so that's a good thing.
There is something to just being, and I've been asked 100,000 times, will you do video as well? And I'm like, look, the level that we're working at, with the athletes that I'm very fortunate to work with, it's no, you need a photographer and you need a videographer or a video team.
Yeah, it's not the same, dude.
It's not when I work with guys like a Tori Powers or what have you, it's 100% just watching him work is just poetry in motion, And then I've got my own little shit show going on the side for sure. But I don't know. I just don't have I'm the same way. Even just trying to turn on my video on my phone to do a bloody goddamn fucking reel and then a skateboard in my office and all this bullshit. I'm like, dude, it's not me. It's not there are people out there that have that. And then I like to think I'm that person or one of the people out there that I get so passionate over my still image. It's a film in of itself, just one image to me. It's just there's people that have the film bug, and I just don't have it. And I think it's rad. It's cool not to, and it's cool to have it too. So
yeah.
Well, it's cool to tell stories through the voice and and transfer a message. Because that's essentially what everyone's doing. And I see that a lot in coaching. Because the message that I want to transfer to my athletes is to believe in themselves and to see it from their own eyes. And I think that, people can do that through video. They can do that through photos. They can do that through words. And that's, when you live intentionally, you're basically telling a story. You're telling a story that can either manipulate people to do what you want or to inspire them to do what you want. And hopefully, we can all move from positions of inspiration rather than manipulation in a medium or a voice that, is positively creating change. And that's, what I learned through snowboarding and what I've taken into coaching is that like you find that original piece of inspiration. And if you can constantly kind of fall back on as the root for your perspective, hopefully you can create that narration, that narrative growth for other people to kind of follow in line with. And that, whether it's through photos, whether it's through video, whether it's through mentorship or just being a good friend.
Yeah. Man, that's so well said. Yeah, I love it. It's so well said. Thank you for that. Well, this episode, I think, has been absolutely incredible. We've talked about success. We've talked about failure, sacrifice, so many gnarly things, so many great things. And I appreciate you for being an open book. And like, yeah, it's been awesome, man. Like it's cool to have the perspective that you've shared and the stories that you've shared. But before we shut this episode down, do you have any parting motivating words for people that are listening? You've shared so many already, but like if there's one thing that you can leave people with, what would it be?
No sacrifices, just choices. Everything's a choice. No matter how imminent you feel that you have to make this thing, it's still a choice. Even taxes. You can go live out in the woods and get paid under the books. You don't have to pay them. Like everything is a choice. And the more that you can own that, the happier you're going to be. Because then there's no one else to blame. And you can just live your story, your narrative, and tell the story that you want. Because you realize that it's your choice.
Wow.
Dope.
That's the banger right there. Thank you for that, man. Wow. Well,
Wild.
Yeah. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you
Thanks
guys
for
for
coming
having
to
me.
hang out.
Honor. It's an honor and privilege.
Let's go grab some dinner and hang out and have some more incredible conversations.
Sounds great.
Appreciate you being here, being part of the Traction family. And we're going to go get you some beans real quick. Wow. Dope. Yeah, this was so fun.
This is a good one.
Yeah, cool. I can't wait to come ride bikes and steamboat with you.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, all joking aside, and I was going to ask you this afterwards, you have got to get me on one of these snowboards that goes like downhill real fast.
Oh, dude, if you want to try it, we do it.
I want to give this shit show a go.
As long as I can be there to watch it.
Yeah, let's do this for sure.
All right,
anyway.
Man.
Yeah,
cool.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. Seriously stoked you're part of the Traction family.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, with that, keep being scared of normal. We'll catch you on the next one.